here all the
That has to be changed. And she sent me the links. I can't get it all. Yesterday, you still can't? No. I wrote everything down and I got checked out yesterday. Of course, we one of those extremely busy days. And the journals and that. Because she was in the way down for strange. Absolutely no work.
All right, we have 8 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Can everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any public discussion?
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Lori Walton, Algona Public Library Director, member of Kossuth County Library Association. I've had a lot of patrons come in and ask me what the status is of restoring the funding, and I want to make sure I give the correct information. I've also been contacted by members of the press, and so I think it would help if you could make some kind of a statement that would let people know where we're at. And maybe I've just missed it, but it seems like that clarification would help people. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else for public discussion?
Good morning.
Good morning.
On July 30th, you guys hosted a meeting regarding Drainage 110, District 110. We as landowners were...
Can you introduce yourself? For
I am
everybody?
Dwayne Davids.
Thanks, Frank.
We were not given any information in advance of that meeting, so we were unprepared as to what was going to be announced. At the meeting, we were presented a one-page summary announcing a $350,000 assessment in the district. At that meeting, we asked for clarification to determine how those numbers were calculated. As far as I'm aware, as of this time, the only thing really that some of us have received is a complete warrant listing, and left basically to our own to deduce how those numbers were computed. There were a lot of confusion from the members that were there, and I guess I and others have looked over the financials of this district. Not only can we not figure out or conclude how you came up with those numbers that were used to make that assessment, but our computations come up differently and expose what appears to be some additional errors used in the previous conclusions made by the board. As trustees for that district, you guys are responsible and required to perform your duties on behalf of the landowners. We as landowners are not sure as to what legal guidelines you're allowed to make such an assessment for a project that was completed 9 years ago. And concerned, I guess, what precedent this establishes, that not only in this district but any other district, anybody is allowed to come back after a closing meeting and present some claims of any nature that can be thrown back into the consideration to be used as an assessment against the landowners. So first of all, I guess I would like to ask, are there any additional meetings that are scheduled or will be scheduled to provide clarity as to the numbers that were presented to the Drain 10 meeting on July 30th?
Elizabeth
Hi, Elizabeth. Hold on just 1 second.
is now joining.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
At this point, we don't have anything scheduled, but we probably should have another one for that one and another district as well.
I would really advise that you do that. Because at this point, even if you could convince the landowners that we have an obligation to be held accountable for the errors and omissions that were made years ago by previous board members, we disagree think, as to what the correct assessment should be. And I think that adequate time should be given so that this situation can be explored further, determined its appropriateness, and if so, certainly determined its accuracy, which is of utmost importance. We can't have an assessment that's not based upon something that can be well understood, clarified, transparent for our landowners. So I asked that assessment to be put on hold until such time as we can reach those conclusions. This is not a new concept. In 2020, I have a paper that was sent out to landowners in 110 that basically described a mistake was discovered after an assessment was made, asked those landowners to not make any payments on that assessment until the accounting could be corrected. So I'm asking, I guess, if something similar can be done here in this process at this point, because most of these landowners received yesterday their assessments, and we would like to have them paused, I guess, until we can figure out what the proper situation here is in this district. Thank you.
We can put that on the agenda. Thank you. All right. Anything else for public discussion?
Well, I think you should give her an answer to her question
For the budget amendment?
for the library.
So Tammy did have a paper here where she had kind of a draft amendment prepared, so we will talk about that later today. That's, I don't know, that's the most status I have. Anyone else have anything? Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda and minutes, and then to go straight to our discussion with Elizabeth Dyer. She is on the phone waiting here for us.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Alright. Any discussion on the agenda or minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Elizabeth, can you hear us?
I can. Good morning.
Good
morning. Well, any,
Danny's here for.
yeah, I know.
But she has a
We're-
meeting she has to go to.
Yeah, she's at another
Okay.
client and we're paying.
Okay, I didn't know if we could have her, or have Dan come back after a little bit if he doesn't want.
Do you have anything short to do, like half hour maybe, or less?
Yeah.
Okay, if you want, that's fine, otherwise you can hang out, whatever. you wanna do.
I'll come over and have it.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
So, anyone on the board got any questions for Elizabeth to start off?
I think it'd be good if Elizabeth gave our general opinion on TIF districts, and then we could have some questions, go from there.
Sure, Elizabeth, do you wanna start off?
Sure. TIF is a really useful tool. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we
You
can.
can.
Yep.
Okay. I'm getting a little echo in my room here, so I just want to make sure you can hear me okay. TIF is a good tool. My gut reaction when somebody asks me about it is always to say no. And, make sure you explore all the options before you go down that path, because a lot of times TIF is, kind of misunderstood on how you can use it, what you're supposed to be using it for, what the process is. And so, when I have my county auditors and my boards of supervisors ask me about it, my gut reaction is to say no, and then I follow it with, make sure you check out all the options before you go down that path. Because sometimes you can accomplish, the same thing. You can draw in that business, you can go ahead and, build that infrastructure without having to use the TIF process, because it is complex. And I think a lot of boards of supervisors don't realize all the, the little things that go into it, all the reporting that's required, just working with solutions to get those districts set up. It's a very complex process. And so, if you're looking to do rebates, that type of thing, or an abatement, if you're looking at a project, you always have debt options other than TIF. And so again, it's a complex process, and I just want to make sure that everybody's going into it with their eyes wide open and totally understand the process.
All right.
Because it is, like I said, it is a lot of extra reporting on Tammy's side. You know, she's ultimately going to be the one that has to do all of this if you guys do decide to use the tax increment financing tool. And again, it's a great tool if it's used properly. You just have to be very careful in the process too, so that you're not paying things that you're not supposed to be paying out of TIF, and that you're doing everything properly, that all the reporting is done properly.
So Elizabeth, when you mention other ways to build up that infrastructure, what are you specifically referring to, or what are some examples?
You know, if you're looking to go ahead and, you know, build roads and bridges and do that thing, you can use the tax increment financing, or, you know, you can just straight out bond for it. You know, I do have a couple counties that they don't want to go down the TIF route, and so they choose to do the general obligation debt instead, and then the whole county pays for it. Again, it's an option, but if you're looking at doing the whole urban renewal plan and just focusing on a specific area, you know, it kind of makes a difference what type of project you're looking at.
Okay.
And again, too, you know, with TIF, the expenses do get up there. You know, you have to amend your urban renewal plan because all of those projects have to be included in the plan, and you have to have the public hearings and the publications and the legal costs in order to do that. So, you know, when you're looking and factoring in how much is it going to cost us to do this, you know, don't forget those costs too, because that is part of it.
Roger, did you have a question or anything you're thinking?
Just thinking that the process is worth it. You gain a few dollars in what you can spend in the county. But I guess the question is, how much does it really cost for a TIF district compared to bonding?
Geo bonds?
Yeah.
That'd be something, Elizabeth, can you speak to that at all, or is that something we need to ask our attorney? And
that's going to be an attorney question, because again, your urban renewal plan has to be updated to include, you know, the area that you're referring to, the project you're referring to, and I don't know what they charge to do that, because normally the attorneys are involved in those urban renewal plans. And then also you have to have all of that published with all those resolutions, and so you've got increase in paper, you know, the official publication costs too. So, you know, again, you know, your attorney's probably going to give you a better estimate as far as what the cost of all that is going to be. But it's just a lot of extra hoops to go through. And again, with the TIF debt issuance, you know, Tammy's got to feel comfortable with all of the reporting and, you know, all the extra roles that she's going to play with this too, because she's going to be the one that has to go ahead and, you know, make sure the levies are right and make sure you're collecting the right amount and getting it, you know, she's the one that's responsible for certifying that debt and, you know, making sure it is eligible to be paid with the TIF revenues. So, you know, a lot of that falls on her and what her comfort level with that is as well.
did you have any
Well, what
questions?
sources can the debt be applied to, other than general basic or general supplemental, or is there anything you can apply the debt to that the county owns?
You mean like limits of things that we could do for
Yeah.
projects?
You mean for TIF or for general obligation?
For TIF?
It has to be an urban renewal.
For TIF, it has to be in the urban renewal plan. It has to be in your plan.
So compliance with the urban renewal stuff would be guidance from our attorney? Is that correct?
Yes.
As far as making sure the projects
Yes.
comply? Okay.
Right, right. And, you know, it has to be in that geographical area and it has to have, you know, urban renewal motivated.
Yep.
Whereas, you know, the general obligation is, you know, it depends on what kind of projects you're anticipating too. You know, if you know, general obligation, there's a whole list of things in the code that you can use those for. Same with essential county purpose, all that is spelled out in the code, what you can and can't use that for.
Yep.
Elizabeth, do you have any counties that you represent that have tipped their windmills?
Can you say that one more time? You cut out.
Sorry, do you have any counties you represent right now that have tipped their windmills?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a whole handful of them.
And how is that going for them? Any big issues?
Some have done it very successfully. Others got a little bit carried away and tried to capture too much. And they ended up, you know, when there were some changes at the state level with the funding and the rollbacks and everything, they did get into a little bit of a pinch. And I did have one that had to issue some general obligation. You know, they had to have a debt service levy to be able to cover because they, like I said, were a little bit overzealous with what they thought they were going to capture for that TIF value. So in order to make principal and interest payments, they did have to borrow a little bit from general. So, but again, you know, I've had the rest of that was in one instance. You know, the rest of them that have tipped the windmills have been able to do it successfully. And, you know, mainly it's been secondary roads projects is what the purpose of that was for in that urban renewal area. So, you know, they did a lot of roads and bridge improvements using those dollars. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple of those counties that are using TIF successfully?
For windmills?
Howard County, actually, yeah, Howard County, the auditor there is Julie Chapman, and they have done all kinds of different TIF projects. They've done rebate agreements for, you know, some of their smaller businesses. They have done the windmill tipping with road improvements. They actually have dabbled into low to moderate income housing as well. So they kind of have a wide range. That's probably the county that has the biggest range of TIF projects going on. And again, it's a smaller county and they've used TIF very successfully to make some improvements. So I guess that would be, you know, and they're also a solutions county. So they're on the same software that you are. So that would be a great contact if you want to get a hold of Julie. And, you know, she has gone to other counties and presented about TIF. And, you know, is a very good resource person. You know, she actually works with the mechanics of it and how to do it on the solution side. You know, I know what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to flow, but as far as actually sitting down and doing it, you know, our independence prevents us from being involved in that process. So, you know, Julie is one that actually has worked with the software and knows how it's supposed to go through your system.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Anyone else from the board have any questions or thoughts?
You know, and you were asking about other options too, and I do have a county that is very adamant that they don't want to have any debt, and you know that's kind of the goal. They don't want it whether it's general obligation or TIF, and so they also want to keep their tax levy consistent. they don't wanna have the highs and the lows if they would, have to have a big project. And so they've kind of built their levy where, they have a special projects fund. And, every year they're putting dollars away, for those projects that come up. I also have a county that does that for secondary roads. Granted, it's not as large of an area of a county as what you guys have. You've got a lot of miles of roads to maintain there. A lot more than what this county does, but, they've done the same thing where, they're saving so that they don't have to bond and they don't have to have debt when they do have those projects come up. And that way they keep their tax levies consistent. They're constantly, tucking that money away, and then if they have a project come up, then, they're ready to go and they don't have the cost of the debt. And with your county being so large, again, that might not be feasible, but, might be doable for some projects, but maybe not some of the bigger ones.
Okay.
They don't get criticized for having a pot of taxpayer money just sitting there. I mean, that's something that's.
Like I said, it's a conservative amount that they're able to stash away, and they've been able to justify it. This is a county that Farm Bureau is very active in, and so Farm Bureau is very active in their budget process, and so they've actually been able to show, what the cost of the debt would be versus the way that they're doing it, and they've been able to satisfy any taxpayer questions with that, because they prefer to have that level, consistent tax rate. And again, that's presented on the budget, and when it's presented for your cash and gap reports, and then on the financial statements too, that particular fund balance is shown as restricted for future, projects. So the fund balance is easily explained, so that's kind of eliminated all the questions they've had about it. But again, too, each county is different, and, the taxpayers and citizens have different concerns, depending on what county you're in. So, but like I said, their taxpayers have been agreeable to it.
Okay. Roger, do you have something else, or? I just saw your hand there. Okay, well, I guess thanks for your time, Elizabeth. I know I've chatted with you a couple times about things over the years, so, if we need anything else going forward, I think we can all get those questions asked and answered if anything comes up, so appreciate that. And
Thank you, Elizabeth, for being available this morning.
And I would prefer definitely, if you do have questions, to do it, because like I said, if you decided to go down the tax increment financing route, it's really complicated and complex, especially with what Tammy has to do. And it's really important to get it started off on the right foot and totally understand what you can and can't do and the order of things. You have to have debt before you can go ahead and be making payments with those TIF funds. So you have to have an obligation. So, it's just really important to get started off on the right foot, so.
Understanding the process is important, yep.
Exactly.
Alright, any last thoughts or questions from the board here? Alright, thank you, Elizabeth, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
All right, yep, have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Alright.
Elizabeth.
Alright, next we can go back to the claims and conservation claims. Anyone have any questions on those?
Good insurance payment come out.
Yeah,
That 600,000 insurance was a little bit,
Yeah.
made a double take on it.
yeah. And my document didn't load, but there was some stuff that looked like Doug had paid for, that was reimbursing for, and In non-departmental, maybe? Those seem like this INS Strategies Consulting. Do any of you guys know anything about that? It's like the last page before the summary.
Is that Doug's?
Yeah, it's to Doug, yeah.
I would say insurance strategies consulting.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what we've done with them or what they were used for, or I don't know anything about that.
I have no
Does
idea.
anyone know anything?
And then there's a credit card payment fee.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't pay that directly here or what it's even for.
That would be a question for him. I don't know.
You'll be up later when you ask him.
Do you wanna ask before or after we pay the bills?
It's up to you.
I guess I'd kinda like to know what that's for, but
That's fine. You want me to call him?
sure, please.
Hi, Doug Carter. Hey, there is a question on the claims. Are you able to run up quick? Okay, thanks. Bye. They'll be right up.
Did anyone else see anything else that had a question on? Okay. And then I guess we also had the budget status report, that's on the agenda too. Did everyone look at that or any questions?
Good morning.
Morning, Doug.
Hi.
I was curious on this INS Strategies Consulting, I think it's LLC. It's under non-departmental, but do you know what's that for?
What is it again?
Do you want
I just want
to?
to clarify, INS, not I&S.
Yeah, INS Strategies Consulting. Looks like a reimbursement for
This is a
something.
reimbursement, yes. We are required for self-insurance to file and show that our fund is able to provide. So that is a consultant that goes through and looks at our records, our
Okay.
past and our future, as well as our balance.
Okay.
And they needed to be paid. And they used to just accept warrants from the county, but this year they went to electronics, so I put it on my personal credit card and I'm
Okay.
requesting reimbursement from the county for
Okay,
that expense.
I didn't know what that was for at all. So, okay, that answers
Does that
my question.
satisfy?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
Thanks, Doug.
thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's not any further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the claims and conservation claims.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Is there any questions on the, budget status report?
Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Anything you wanted to highlight on it?
Nope, it's pretty standard. No
Okay.
surprises there.
Okay, we will.
I did have a question. The courthouse expenses, we're at 70% of budget used.
Insurance.
Insurance.
That is the
Insurance.
insurance payment.
Insurance
Okay.
is in that department.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep, yep.
That does a whammy to the budget.
That's a
Yeah.
big percent.
yeah, it's a big part of that budget.
It's
I just
a-
want to make sure that that's all, so it's due to
Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good question.
Alright, yep, and then we can, I don't know, do you wanna try calling Dan, see if he's in his office? I guess Doug's next anyway, so.
Oh.
Kyle, you could address those with the library and explain what they want to know.
I thought I did before. I mean, I said we talk about the amendment, that'll be during discussion with auditor and board probably. If you want to skip down to that, we could while we're waiting for Dan, I suppose, is that?
Well, we just skip down there in case they have
Okay.
something else.
Well, let's get claims signed first, I suppose.
Hey Dan, hey, we're ready for you whenever you are. Alright, thanks.
Okay, do you have the claims over there? Oh, they're under here. Okay.
I think there's 8 credit card claims.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think you can write that,
Morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Use your exercise.
Yeah, get my steps in anyway. All right, well, update from the VA department as of last month. Was looking at 23 phone calls, 65 messages, 28 walk-ins, 27 scheduled appointments, 1 VA transport, 1 hearing aid repaired, and we got about 90 forms submitted to VA for the claims process. Did have a little bit of a typo. That should be 1,222 records instead of 12. So, omit my mistake there.
Kinda figured that.
Currently have 38 claims in the system that I'm tracking, 6 that are marked ready for decision. I've got 24 that I'm developing, 1 in a supplemental claim appeals lane, and we got 2 VA enrollments for healthcare last month. Completed the initial planning session with IDVA for fall school. That was back in July on Camp Dodge. Just received the letter that came out yesterday for the Commissioner's Fall Training on October 14th, which is a Monday. That will be at Camp Dodge, and then they have a social the night before at the Gold Star Museum. So that's where the commissioners will be heading for those that will be attending, and I've got to touch base with them. IDVA also published their letter for our fall school, which will be in Altoona, and that'll be the 15th through the 17th of October, so I'm getting ready for that. I did go over here earlier this month, did some mentorship training with the Hancock County VSO, mostly concentrated on the database reporting system and being able to extract and create reports so that he could brief his commission. working on some additional training with the Training and Education Committee. I did do a computer-based remote training here earlier this month as well on special monthly compensation. We had 60 CVSOs in the state that attended that virtually, so it was very successful, and feedback has been very positive thus far. Also recently had the mobile medical unit back earlier this month. That was a success. We had 5 veterans that we got treated there. They will be back in October, and then we will be into our every other month cycle. Attended the Kossuth County Economic Development Committee breakfast. Still waiting for the IDVA grant monies. I'm told the check's in the mail, so we'll see what happens. As soon as I get that, then I'll get that over to the treasurer's office, get it deposited. Also awaiting the administrative rules regarding the recent change in law, so we can follow that appropriately. There has been some changes on what the allocation grant monies can be utilized and spent for. IDVA has provided some additional guidance and clarification on that. Also, as a side note, have been able to enroll 2 dependent spouses in CHAMP VA, which is a form of health care insurance for them. Didn't have any young dependents or minor children, so primarily just both surviving spouses. So we got that done for them. On the ad hoc report snapshots, which I sent to you in your packet, there's a lot of no changes that you've noted. The claims process is really slowing down. Doesn't help matters much. I've been doing some research. Sounds like VA is going to have to let go about 10,000 folks, which doesn't help my case any or others like me. So I've been seeing about 1 or 2 claims per week get approved, either an award or a denial or an appeal or something. So it's really slowed down. Just a lot of work keeping the veterans updated on the status of their request to let them know I haven't forgot about them, but there's been some limitations there. Currently in the county, I'm tracking approximately 53 veterans that are permanent in total with respect to their service-connected injuries and inability to work. But subject to your questions, that's really all I have regarding my monthly update. Got a gentleman we're getting ready to take over for a medical appointment today. We've been running about 1 to 2 a month. I've been really pushing getting care in the community. And for those veterans that are in their mid to late 70s, early 80s, instead of going clear down to Des Moines, trying to get set up locally or closer to like the clinics in Fort Dodge and Mason City. We did have 2 transfers into the county, one from Minnesota and one from down in Des Moines. So we continue to get onesies and twosies into the county as new veterans, and so I'll be working with some of them to get them established. The one veteran, when she gets settled, will probably be back and we'll get going on healthcare enrollment for her. So that's really all I've got, guys.
All right.
What are some of the things that are included in your commissioner training down at Fort Dodge, or what do they spend their time doing there?
Well, the commissioner training, once they get to Camp Dodge, they're going to focus primarily on the Iowa Code Chapter 35B and what their responsibilities are, providing oversight to my office, developing and helping me with my department budget. What are some things that have been spent? What are some things that we need? Forecasting future needs, that sort of thing. And basically learning what I do to an extent so that they can advise accordingly. What I've shared with my commissioners as well is I kind of expected them to serve as ambassadors and extensions of my office. Not to actually know my job, but in the communities in which they live, if there's a veteran they bump into at the store, the gas station, they got a question or a problem, they can do a referral to me. That's one of the other things I got to do is get my business cards reordered because I ran out. So I got to get that done this week. But a lot of stuff related to supervisory capacity and how that applies to the Chapter 35B and the evaluation and, you know, whether or not the VSO is maintaining the credentials and doing all those things that are required now, because before it was kind of fluid, and before the change in the law, you know, none of this was set in print, so to speak. So now, I mean, the accreditation has to be done within a year. You have to have a PIP card. You have to maintain that accreditation. You have to continue your CEUs every year. And if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, the individual shall be removed according to the code. So put some teeth back into that. And part of that was seen because we had peers that were in those positions for a number of years, and we're not keeping up with their requirements, which is not only a disservice to the county they represent, but also the veterans of whom they've been tasked to serve. So that's kind of the overall gist of it. All righty. Thanks, folks.
Well,
Guys, have a good week.
Yep,
Thanks,
thank you,
Dan.
All
Dan.
right.
Alright. Do you wanna give Doug a call?
Yes, we are up to right away, if you wanna let him know. Alright, thanks.
Is that the books you wanted, the Robert's Rules?
Yep, looks like I didn't go that close, but 12th edition, yep, should be good. Morning, Doug.
Good morning. Good morning.
We are, I think our, said, well, when he called down, but yeah, we are up to right of way, so.
Okay,
Looks like we got one in the folder there.
correct. Iowa Lakes Electric Cooperative has requested to remove an overhead crossing, electric crossing, and bore under 70 Avenue just to the north of, or south of 480 Street. It's to a Wallstead residence, and I would recommend that the Board of Supervisors would approve this permit 08/26/24.
Alright,
I'll make a motion to approve.
okay, we have a motion and I'll second that. Is there any discussion or further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimous.
All right, Kyle, if we get your signature here, please.
Yep.
There you go, thank you. And then we do have a road closure as well, Merriman Bridge construction. They will be beginning the bridge project 572604. Oh shoot, they did not print up the resolution for that and attach it to this location map. Is there a
I've got it.
We
resolution?
got it in
I've
our.
got it here.
Woods,
I'll print it. I got it.
would it be okay, I'll supply it to you, Tammy, but if you will record.
2
who
copies.
Makes a motion, I'll get them printed and bring them up.
He's gonna print them now at this copy.
Okay, very good, thank you very much. I apologize for that.
Yeah, should be.
But it's a resolution to close the road for the construction, and then we'll open it back up once the construction is completed.
Yep, and this is between 170th and 180th on 230th Avenue.
Correct.
Alright, and this should be our first resolution, so. Resolution number would be 08/20/24
Do you have a copy?
01.
Good enough, thank you. Will you please repeat that?
It's 08/20/24 01, right?
Yep.
Alright, we have the resolution in front of us, everyone's got it in the packet. Is there any questions, otherwise I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve resolution 8/20/2401.
Okay, is there a second? Jack, thanks. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say,
You did.
oh, roll call, sorry, yep.
Plath, Jerks,
Yes.
Wactor,
Yes.
Nath,
Yes.
Stecker.
Yes,
Sorry, couldn't say your name.
you're good. Motion carries unanimous. And then we can, let me see quick.
They duplexed it.
That's all right.
You
You need original.
well, no, I had the resolution, it was on the back of the
Oh.
location map. They duplexed
So
it
you
on
didn't,
me.
you didn't see it.
More prepared
So
than you thought you were. Yeah.
I needed to just flip it over.
Alright. Either way.
Some
we'll have
days,
it
yes.
recorded.
Will you please sign that one
Yes, I
there,
will sign
Tammy?
it for you.
And or Doug Crouch will email it to you.
Thank you. I think he did already.
Did he already?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. All right, I gotta get another cup of coffee.
Alright, did you have anything else for the right of way?
That is all for requests for construction in the right of way.
Okay,
The bridge on the Boat Hobart Road, we got some rain last week on Thursday, so Friday it was too wet for them to work. Originally, they were going to put guardrail on Wednesday, now it's put on Friday. We're doing some work down there today. We should have everything ready for them. Merriman Bridge Construction is doing some repair on the bridge that's on the north line, section 5 of Prairie Township. And actually, I would think at the end of yesterday, that should have been pretty close to being completed. And after that bridge is repaired, they're gonna move on to this contract, the bridge that we just closed. So they'll be working on that. We are mowing pavements. Right now, we're hoping in the next 2 weeks to get over all the pavements for shoulders, and then we're gonna start mowing gravel roads and getting a pass on the gravel roads. Northern Natural Gas Company, they contacted me at the end of last week. They are planning to mow. It's actually, they're gonna be using weed eaters over all of their road crossings in the county, which begins at the east side of Section 25 of Prairie Township, and it runs northwest to Algona. They are going to be just clearing out, making sure there's no trees, making sure the grass is low over their pipeline on 5 feet on each side. So if anyone would ask what is going on, Northern Natural Gas is just doing some maintenance just by doing some cutting in the road right away.
Do they do that every year, or is that every couple of years or something?
I've never had this request before, Kyle, to
Okay.
be honest with you.
I was just-
So I do not know exactly.
And maybe it's something they're doing new too.
It could be. I did not feel that they needed any permission to just go in and mow.
No.
More or less is what they're doing. They're not excavating, they're not doing anything to really damage anything.
Especially when it's by hand, I couldn't
Exactly, they'll be
imagine
stopping the
hurting
truck,
anything.
getting everything completed and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Other than that, I am going to ISAC. I'll be leaving Thursday morning and returning Friday afternoon. The solar ordinance moratorium is to be published in the papers this week. Sway City, Bancroft, and Algona papers. And the first consideration is on the agenda for September 3rd. And that's really all that I have right now.
Okay. Any questions for Doug from the board? Alright, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Go from there. Ready for board discussion?
Sure, so,
Auditor discussion, I should say.
yeah, so tonight you have a joint meeting with EMA here in the boardroom at 6 o'clock. Next week, all we have is 2023 homestead and military disallowances. That's all we have so far on next week's agenda, so I'm sure that'll fill up between now and then. I know you guys are meeting tonight with the EMA Commission, and this might answer your question a little bit. Hopefully you will make a decision tonight or whether or not you want that added to the budget amendment or not. So if you make that decision, then next week you can put on the agenda to set a date and time for the budget amendment hearing, which means we could publish September 5th, 4th and 5th, and then have the budget amendment on the 17th, if everything is solved tonight and you're able to move forward with that. If not, then you'll just have to.
I would think we'd have a direction after meeting tonight.
Okay, so then I did go in and plug everything in so everything's ready. I went and plugged it in as if you've approved everything, including tonight's meeting also. And so I do have what those ending fund balance numbers would be if you included everything. So if you want to see those, I can share those with you.
Do you just have one copy or?
I have one copy, yes, but I can make copies or whatever you want me to do with it.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll probably have a little time between our public hearing here for DD4, so we can come back to that too, but yeah, I think that'd be good for everyone to look at.
Yeah, just so you knew what it would look like if, it's like $299,000 is what it would be if you approved everything, including EMA on the amendment. And then $14,000 revenue from mental health transfers from the hospital. So that's what it's looking like right now. And that would come out of 3 different funds: general basic, general supplemental, and rural basic.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Tammy on that right now? Otherwise, yeah, if we can get some copies, and we can all look at that one either before or after our public hearing here. Did you have anything else?
I think that's all I have. I will be going to ISAC Wednesday morning and be back Friday, so.
Okay. All right. Jack?
Board of Health tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Okay.
Nothing?
All right. Josh?
I have nothing, we just got the meeting tonight for emails.
Okay. Carter?
I had no meetings as well.
Alright, I was double checking my calendar, but I did not have any, meetings that way. We do all have a Robert's Rules of Order book on our desk here. I'd asked Tammy to get everybody a book, so if there's any questions, we can all have it handy or take it home to review as needed. But hopefully that'll help, and I, need to follow up with Tim yet on that, but I don't have an update on that yet. ISAC, this week Doug and Tammy both mentioned that. Is anyone else from the board planning on going? I'm not sure at this point, but I'm gonna try to make it, but I don't know.
I got other things going on, so. I'm not be able to make it.
Okay. I didn't know if anyone else was planning to go, so. I will see if I can attend. But,
It's our anniversary and we're finding out the gender of the child. So
Woohoo!
I can't miss
That's
that.
exciting.
yeah,
You can't miss that.
No.
yeah. Alright, well, if there's nothing else for,
I forgot, I did have one thing quick, just an update from Colin, and Marge received this email as well, so she's aware, but they did fly the whole open ditch of PAK one on August 6th and 7th. Colin says I have reviewed the footage in detail and can report that in comparison with the overall damage to the ditch, there is a very small amount of additional 2024 damage. I have found 5 new sites and have about 5 sites that may have increased in length, but will need a site visit to confirm these are not severe. I'm glad we did not spend the time and incur the cost of the district of surveying the ditch on 4-wheelers for 3+ weeks. Numerous sites look better from the drone than last year, but many are still quite bad. Although this year has been very wet historically, it appears to me that the peak event from 2023 exceeded anything from 2024 on this ditch. The question will be whether to pursue FEMA funding for repair of these sites, especially if we are considering leaving many of the previously damaged sites in similar condition. In regards to the most severe sites in need of immediate attention, it still adds up to over 9,000 linear feet of ditch. 5 of these sites extend more than 500 feet, 1 site extends over 1,000 feet. These 5 sites totaling over 4,000 feet together. If we do riprap for all these sites, we'll need a permit from the Army Corps. Need one for anything in excess of 2,000 feet. So they are going to put the video on YouTube for landowners and other joint board members to see. And then we plan to put together an amendment to the previously filed engineer's report and file it hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Once that is filed, we can schedule another hearing and send notice to the landowners.
Okay.
Any thoughts or concerns, please let him know.
well, I don't know about the rest of the board's knowledge on the FEMA aspect, but, food for thought that everyone should consider is if it is turned in for FEMA and the damage is not repaired, it will be ineligible for any future funding until there's documentation the damage is repaired.
Right.
So, if we're not gonna fix it all, it shouldn't be turned in at all.
Right.
Because otherwise it would do a disservice to the district and it would tie our hands for any future possibilities if something even worse comes through and there's catastrophic damage. We won't be able to do it without proof that everything that was known about has been taken care of. So
That
that's
is,
food for thought, but
Colin says there's only 5 new sites they could find and none of them are severe.
and if that's the case, it's a lot of paperwork to get not a lot of money.
Right.
And if we don't fix it all, we're putting the district in a worse position than it is in right now by
Correct.
turning it in.
Correct.
In my opinion.
Yep. I'm just sharing it with what he had found there.
Yeah, and that's a good update. I'm just suggestions because we need to, turn in initial damages and stuff to FEMA, and if there's anything that we don't want turned in, Marge needs to know that so that that paperwork is not conveyed to them.
Right.
So, does anyone else on the board have any thoughts that way, or agree, disagree, whatever?
I don't think it's worth it.
I agree.
With a little bit of repair that would qualify, it's not worth
And then you have extra engineering and everything
I
else.
mean, it would be more costly to the district in into FEMA than not to. Probably,
Depends on how it's handled.
yeah, but 5 new spots that aren't real bad is not a FEMA project to me.
Yeah. No, but now's the time when we need to know whether we're turning it in or not.
Well, the old damage that was done a year ago doesn't qualify, and that's really where all the cost is.
Right.
Well, and like the site that's 1,000, 2,000 feet long, that's not included at all, so.
And that's where, I mean, yeah, if the damage from the previous damage was covered by FEMA and you're talking a $2 million project, that's a lot different than a couple ends of small sections that have to be fixed anyway.
Right.
4,000 feet of it would not qualify.
Well, yeah, and I
That
don't,
needs to be done right away.
yeah. And I know he said in there, made comments, some stuff looked better. A lot of times, like what I saw with DD4, there was grass growing back in places, but if you look close, you can still see the bank is broken, and that's not something that's gonna hold up in a major event down the road. So, I mean, it might look a little better now than it did at this time last year or before, but.
Do you wanna just do her right before we do the 10 o'clock so she doesn't come and have to come in?
Yeah.
Just got the one from.
Yeah, we can
And I'm
do
already,
that.
I filled it out, so I know what it is.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
if we just come
And
back
you-
in
it's-
5 minutes before 10, we could do that.
Yeah, yep, that'll work.
Okay.
So, alright, any other questions or comments or whatever for board discussion? Okay, otherwise, let's see if we can get a couple copies of the
Yep.
amendment, and then everyone can review them between now and 10 o'clock roughly. We got some more.
Is it? I think it is. We made it, first hour.
Just a second, I'll say, did you have any other reports?
Too bad. Well, I guess I'd like to ask, I guess how many would like to receive it? We'd like to see.
No, I don't think.
Yeah, well,
You've got one member in our group, what's a CPA?
Can't you write it in the-
So pretty intent, look at this.
Yeah, the amendment.
What are you with or where?
Oh,
Yeah.
right,
So
EMA,
he's
EMA, right.
Right.
You can see what he would.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
You know,
EMA.
so a couple items that I think definitely looked at is that
Killing you guys. That's it.
in 2017, no, excuse me, 2019 through 23,
Well, there ain't time for family.
your assessment is 34,000 for repairs that were done.
We can't say.
But we had $17,000 that were already assessed. I think there were some others also that were assessed here. Now, I don't know if that just is something that's overlooked. I don't know what the process is in terms of. Marge should have a ledger
The legals are important, legals are important.
for every district. When an invoice comes in, it should be recorded and traced.
Those
It should
are.
be tracked to an assessment.
So if that's the case, I guess
Well-
explain how this can be overlooked.
Not exactly sure on that dollar figure, cause this was 2019's assessment,
No, these
or
are,
this is 21's assessment.
yes, correct. I mean, we were assessed 17,000 in 21, and then there were some other ones too. I've got assessments list from our records, you know, from 2020, for example, that was 21. These are from 20 for repairs on 110s. So all of these need to be subtracted off from whatever you're trying to claim for that repair period. For one thing.
So, the numbers we have, right, just have a general total that's outstanding, and that's figuring interest to December. So I think you probably have it.
Yeah, so I mean, these expenses
No, so it's not
these
that.
expenses that came in here in 2019,
Well, what I have is just a total outstanding for the drain, and then it shows in the comments and stuff, it lists how much is coming in on waivers now, which is something we hadn't had before.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that's the other,
that's really nuts and bolts of what we voted on was the outstanding, total outstanding balance versus and it's a little bit more than that by, I don't know, 25,000 whatever, but,
so
it's supposed
I mean,
to.
for Marge to send us a list of the complete warrants that were issued, we're not in dispute with what the original program repair project cost was. I mean, that $2.114 million, I mean, this is coming in higher, but there were some things here that are on this list from 2019.
So just curious,
Report from 2020.
Yeah.
we had
But,
done
you know, so he
library
also took a
budget.
look,
We
so going all the
increased
way
on
back
the
to
tech
21,
portion,
and assuming
tech
that
grant
none of
portion,
these were
and
previously
we
assessed
increased
out
on
in
that,
the years, which,
divided,
again,
is that
What year
bringing
did
that
that
tech
happen?
grant portion back down to where it was?
started in.
So was this all in
It's
here
making
for that?
it-
Well, it was probably some preliminary
Just
work, but again,
shifting
I guess
all
I
back
don't
to the
know.
same
I mean, that's what it looks like, but, I
Okay.
mean, you gotta understand from a
I wanted to make
landowner's
sure that we
point of
weren't just
view
gonna
that
add into
we don't know
the divided and
necessarily
then leave
Yeah.
the
what
tech
these
grant
were
where
for.
we had
Whether
it.
they were
Yeah.
previously
No.
assessed.
Yeah, I figured it was much, but it's
Yeah. Yeah,
Process, so whenever that petition was acknowledged by the
Yeah.
board and sent to an engineer, that's when the process would have started. So we should have that paperwork to say that timeline.
But are
by that, I
you-
would assume that that was all.
Are you not as trustees required by statute to distribute, within 2 years, every single dollar of invoices that come in, you issue warrants for them? And then if they're over a certain amount, they have to be done within a shorter time frame.
I don't know of a shorter timeframe in the code. I do know a section that it does say something about 2 years. I don't know what code section that is, but,
See that?
at the end of the day, there's no one else that's liable for that expense of the district, and I don't like saying that, but.
Well, I think that's fair, and I guess that's probably the only reason why we're negotiating, I guess, at this point, because we recognize that the county's upside down with its finances as a result of these mistakes that were made in the past.
Well, and that's where, I mean, we could have it on the next agenda to talk about, delaying that assessment or putting it on hold or whatever. And we can do that, but at the same time, then you got another year of interest potentially. And, I mean.
But you gotta understand, I guess, from the landowner's point of view, and we have a fairly wide, diverse opinion of how to handle this. That's your problem, not our problem.
But it's not because of the liability of the
Well,
district.
no, I mean, the other issue is, is to what extent you guys are conflicted between your responsibilities to the county and your duties as trustees to this district.
And it doesn't think it's.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that,
And Clear Lake thinks it's all.
So this has nothing
What-
to do with county finances.
well, it does, and let me explain my
Okay.
point, okay? It has the potential to be argued that your assessment that you're attempting to levy here in 110 is motivated by your supervisor role to get the county back above board financially. That's superseding or at least conflicting or competing with your role as a trustee that's responsible to these landowners to minimize or effectively manage the cost for these repair projects.
So how do you say that this is getting the county back above board?
Well, if somehow you're successful in convincing these landowners, not only in 110, but all these other districts where these problems have become discovered, that infusion of cash is what's going to help this county come back to neutral.
No, it won't, and I can say that I shouldn't turn charity. But the discussions we are having about general basic and rural basic funds and all that sort of stuff, the budget amendment is talking about, that has zero correlation with this at all. This is,
But we don't,
this is basically.
we don't know that. And the reason we don't know that is because in review of these financials, with the way that this was supposed to go versus the way that it has gone, we're $98,816 in shortages
Did
here.
they calculate the interest cost for all that? For all those warrants?
Absolutely.
Per day from the day they were issued to the day they were called in?
This guy spent a whole week on
Well, I
this.
haven't seen it.
I know you have.
So that's why I'm asking the
And
question.
he's gonna be in town potentially on Friday, I guess, if
Okay.
you guys wanna meet with us. That's up to you. But,
I'm supposed to be in.
but we have no explanation as to why your
But
records.
what did he do from that? Like, can I look at that quick, or like,
Yeah, Marge has a copy of this whole thing, and I
what
mean,
did she get just now?
she got it yesterday at some point.
Thanks a lot.
So,
Oh, goodness.
And let me walk you through it. So basically, and he didn't provide the documentation, but he took this complete whole entire warrant list, the dates, corresponded them to October 1st of 2016, and he came up with a total interest figure of $238,000.
why did he tie him to October 1st, 2016?
Because September 30th was the deadline for everybody to either make the decision to send the county the check or put it on a waiver.
Okay, yeah.
And my argument potentially is, and so again, we have a vast difference of opinion here on how to properly accept this. So we had a closing meeting for this district in September of 2015, and it took the supervisors a whole nother year to make that assessment, and now you're attempting to come back and charge us interest for that year.
Yeah, so I can,
So, I mean, my opinion is of this $238,000 that he computed for all of these warrants and their respective dates brought up to the present value, that interest is $238,000. If it would have been to October 1st of 2015, when you guys should have had the assessment out, it takes off $126,000 of that.
and that could be,
So
but
that-
here's
that's where.
what you have to do. You have to actually calculate the interest charged per day for each of these to the status date of when they were redeemed, regardless of when you can compare when they could have or when they should have been done, but for the actual outstanding balance for the drain, you have to go to the status date. So like some of these were redeemed in 2022, so they've been collecting interest since they were issued in 6/2/2015 until 22. So that interest isn't figured, and you got 5 pages here.
Okay, your point is valid, all right? The counter argument to that is that
They should have been assessed, I'm well aware. Like, it should have been assessed earlier, because I went through one of the drains,
The interest should have been assessed earlier.
all of it should have been assessed
Well,
earlier.
we're right, I mean, it should have been added into the.
It should have been
So
into
that,
the
that's
project
basically, I mean,
cost.
I'm kind of right. So that's essentially what he did, and I guess, I mean, if you've got.
But how did he calculate it? Because that's going to,
Okay,
Offset.
I'll attempt to show you. So this was what our original project cost was, okay? Between the north main and the south main.
what's that number come from?
This comes, I think, from,
The completion report?
yes.
Okay, so that'd be representative of construction and engineering.
So then he took this, he took this, he took this $2.114 million and he added this $238,000 of interest that should have been computed by the supervisors. And so the project cost should have been this. So he used this number basically to calculate everything through to determine what should have been done, okay? And it's in respect to that he comes up with this discrepancy of $98,000 that weren't received compared to what the original column was, and this $625,000 of outstanding warrants as of the end of 2016. So we have no ability to account for this. And that's why, so from a 30,000 foot view, our perspective as landowners is that we acknowledge that a mistake was made. And we feel that we're only, are argumentatively subject to compensating for interest that the county absorbed between when the project was started in 2011 and when it was completed, and the assessments came out.
Yeah, and
So as of October 1st of 2016, everybody in the district either paid their assessment or they put it on a waiver. At that point, the county is neutral.
that would be the case if the assessment was enough to cover the total cost. So-
We figured that's why he did it this way.
But what was
So
the
we-
assessment that was sent out?
Well, we haven't ascertained that, but it should have been 2.114. Again, so this is the question,
It should
Kyle.
have been,
How
so,
deep do you want me to dig? I mean, do you want me to start every goddamn warrant here and go back to McClure's and make sure these are all accurate? Make sure that everything is in our district? Make sure that the 2.114 was properly assessed to everybody?
so I'm gonna take
And
an
then do you want-
educated
and
stab
then
in
do you
the
want
dark
me-
and
and
say
then do
that
you
it
want me-
probably wasn't.
And I know, because we've got a lot of evidence that it isn't. Not only in this district,
The
but
bill
because you've
should,
got other people in this county and other districts
The
that
bill
have been
should-
looking at this stuff longer than I have.
the bills should correlate to the district.
I'm assuming that they do.
I mean, I haven't looked at anything from 2011, so I can't tell you. But the bills should correlate to the district. That's what the invoices and all
But
that.
that's kind of the
should be.
viewpoint that I'm taking, Kyle, if you can understand this.
I get that.
I don't care what's happened. We're all human, we all make mistakes.
Yep.
But from the landowner's perspective, I can only advocate to my fellow landowners that we're responsible for the interest for these warrants from this date up until the
So
completion of the project.
That's why I'm not questioning the numbers in here to be an asshole or anything. I'm questioning them because if you don't understand every single technical detail of how this happens, the chances of being able to accurately reflect it in documents like this are
I get that.
lower.
I get that, but again, we've got the issue date here, we've
Yeah.
got the status date here, and
But
again,
was that correlated?
I asked that question to him, and I believe it was. Again, this guy is a financer and a CPA. I mean, his ability to work with this is beyond mine.
I believe that, but when we were dealing with these other things, I was asking questions to people that are knowledgeable on drainage in particular. And one of their first recommendations was engaging a CPA or talking to someone with accounting background. And I said, okay, that's fine and dandy, they will understand the number side of it. But how do you explain the fundamentals of the situation so that they can put that in a form that
Well,
is accurately represented?
With all respect, Kyle, the fundamentals of the situation was that we had a closing meeting on this district in September 22nd of 2015.
Mhm.
From that point in time, a landowner determines, I guess, what the reasonable time frame is for you to take that number that's agreed to and put it out to an assessment, and everybody has the choice at that point. They can send you a check, or they can apply for a waiver.
Yeah.
At that point, when that assessment goes out,
Yeah.
the county is neutral.
Should be.
It is fundamentally.
But if it wasn't all, so like here, he's got deferred principal. Okay,
That's because we don't know
He's
how,
assuming.
we don't know how many warrants. That's why I say, how deep do you want us to start looking?
as deep as it takes to get answers.
Well, I mean,
I mean-
that's part of what we're asking for, and I think we need to understand here that if we're gonna work our way through this, we're gonna need to do this in a manner, I guess, where we can cooperate and get to an agreement, otherwise it's gonna get ugly.
Yeah, and I have no issue with that, but the issue here, yes, you can acknowledge that this is assumed because it's different of the direct, but you can't assume that because if that total wasn't assessed out, then that's the shortfall from the beginning. So if the total that was assessed out was 1.9 million instead
Well,
of
I realize,
2.1,
I mean,
it
I
throws
realize.
everything off. And that's where you have to understand the fundamentals.
That's
of how
where,
it
that's where he
works.
did that both ways. So this side is based on the 2.114 that should have been. This side was done on what would have been, providing you guys would have included the $238,000 to the
But
price of the project.
neither of these are probably realistic,
Probably not 100% accurate, but again, there's a difference between a slight discrepancy and $99,000.
That's what I'm saying. If this was off by 200,000 in the beginning, then that shortfall of principal on the front end is not going to pay off all the principal it was designed for.
There's some small difference there, yes.
No, it compounds over time,
Well,
and that's the problem.
Well, and that is the problem with 9 years, and that's the
Well, I
other,
mean, we got,
that's the other problem with this, and that's why the statute requires you guys to deal with these within a 2-year time frame. And that's why we have a lot of landowners in this district, I'm just gonna tell you. You know, so you understand what you're dealing with. They know that there's that 2-year limitation, they recognize the fact that this comes to us 9 years later.
I'm painfully aware of the situation. And there's no good way to put it. But that's what I'm trying to explain is if that assessment in the beginning was short, then even though you're still close to when the project happened, if it was short hypothetically $200,000, you have all that interest that's stacked on top of that then you're paying off principal.
Yeah,
You're
yes,
paying less principal than you think, so
Yes,
then,
we understand that.
and that's where I say, to actually see the situation of what happened, they have to directly be correlated to how much actual interest was paid on each warrant. And the only way I could do that on DD4, the other one I tried to look at, was,
And again, to a certain extent, Kyle, we don't care. Because all that we're concerned about, all that we feel that we're, you know, even potentially responsible for to get the county back whole, is this time period between when it started and the completion date. What you guys did every year with the money that came in from the property taxes and the warrant interest. I mean, the other part of this, Kyle, is that anybody that was granted a waiver on this project, where's that interest money at? Is any of that credited back to the district?
yeah, it should all.
It should have been, but it obviously isn't, because we're $99,000 upside down here compared to where you should have been based upon the money that came into the district.
But that's what I'm saying, if the assessment in the beginning was short, everything's gonna be off. And
We're
it
just,
probably is.
we're just assuming that it was correct. and we're $99,000 short.
But that's what I'm saying, we can't assume that it was correct. I understand the situation and the frustration, I get all that, but we.
Again, Kyle, I don't care. If you guys fail to assess out the right amount, I can't do anything about that.
I can't either, I mean.
To the same extent that I got a lot of people in my group that feel that because you guys, not you personally, but because the supervisors 9 years ago weren't smart enough to understand the principle of the cost of money. I mean, one of the most basic fundamental principles of life in America is the cost of money. And it was completely overlooked in this district and many other districts. And we're sympathetic to the fact that because of those mistakes, the county is significantly upside down in its resources.
But that has no correlation with general basic and rural basic, or any of the general county budgets, no correlation.
I'm okay with, I'm agreeing with that. But again, from a landowner's perspective and somebody that understands how numbers work, because we don't have any basis to understand why this district is $99,000 short, we can only assume that funds that came in from our property taxes were being used for other purposes and vice versa. And that's why the difference is, unless we've got some landowners that are delinquent in their taxes, which I doubt.
Probably not. But like here, even this 238, which he said should have been part of the original assessment, that's honestly, that's why I used the 200,000 as a round figure. If that was short on the original assessment, everything multiplies in snow
Right.
there.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, I don't, but that's where, what I did to go back and calculate.
I didn't bring that sheet with me, Kyle, but that potentially explains the discrepancy between the $238,000 and the $298,000 that you attempted to assess.
How's that look? Painful?
Occupational hazard, is it?
Kinda, yeah. So, I'm just gonna do 240,000 times 6% interest is 14, almost 15,000 a year. 16 to now, 8 years, that plus,
Yeah, I mean, I understand your point.
that's literally what happened.
I understand your point.
So, yes, it was short in the beginning, it was not assessed enough. So that's where the waivers take care of themselves, but they don't take care of everything. If it's not assessed in the beginning, it's never gonna be right.
But that's the point and the purpose of having that closing meeting, so that the proper number can be established, so that exact thing that you're talking about doesn't happen.
Right.
It happened.
Kyle, you sign this, it's part of the payroll, and it just.
Yeah, just lay it on my desk, thank you. Yeah, I'm
3,000 in court.
Oh, yeah, Alex.
right there with you, and I'm frustrated.
Like I said, we got a whole gamut of opinions.
That's fine.
It's part.
To be truthful, the way I interpret it, we have a majority
General basic to general
that
supplemental.
think that there's
And
been
you
too
did
much
also,
time
there
that's
was
gone
one
on, and
budgeted
this opens up a
general
dangerous
basic
precedent
for our
where
bonds.
anybody
Okay.
can think that they've got a drainage district repair project completed.
So we're,
And then at some
we
point in
need
time,
Sure.
in that
somebody's
fund
gonna come
at
back.
least
Be it the
3,000 to
county,
be for those
be it
things.
Okay.
a
So that's
Thank you.
all, that's all
contractor,
there is.
Okay.
be it anybody comes back and says, well, we overlooked something, we forgot $100,000 worth of expenses, and now we'd like you to pay that plus 6% interest for 9 years.
If it had been assessed correctly the first time, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I understand that,
But,
but that's not reality.
correct, it's not, but,
That's the question, is how are you gonna deal with it? And I'm just gonna say, I mean, instead of you guys, after making this decision in March to assess our district, and waiting until the end of July to inform anybody about it,
I would have been in May.
okay, if you would've, had this meeting the other day in July and approached this differently, and said to our landowners, look, ladies and gentlemen, we discovered we made a mistake. The
And,
county is upside down, $290,000 because we made this mistake.
well, and that's
We'd
where.
like your cooperation to help remedy this problem. Instead, our landowners have the concept that you're just attempting to shove this down our throats to get the county back on top of their finances.
See, and it's not a difference between the Board of Public. A lot of times people refer to them as county drainage districts or county tile or county ditches. They are owned by the district and the landowners. Board members here, we're acting as trustees.
Now we're going back to my original point where,
But
I mean,
we're not, it's not county, it's not a county debt, it's not a county obligation, it's a drainage district obligation that is
Exactly.
owned by the landowners.
which you guys need to be very careful about because you're the trustees for that.
Right,
What is your bond?
we do have bonds, but.
Because that's what it comes down to. And that's why I'm just saying to you this in the most gentle way possible. Because again, not everybody shares my point of view. We're potentially offering you an olive branch here to negotiate this in good faith, to come up with a resolution for this.
If there's something to that effect, for the board to have that conversation, the two of us can have that conversation, but we're walking a line in the boardroom. But if there's something to that effect where attorneys or whatever can be involved, then we probably have to have that conversation or a conversation with the closed session. So that's a whole nother realm.
And I can't predict that. I mean, and I don't know whether that still may happen on an individual basis.
It could.
I mean, I'm trying, I guess, to get a consensus. If there's a reasonable conclusion that can be met here, and we can get a consensus among the landowners to resolve this, that's going to be the best outcome for both parties, in my opinion. And unfortunately, I mean, we've got some really smart people here that look at this and have opinions about what the right number should be. And then we've got other people that walk a moral tightrope that decide what they think the right pathway should be toward resolution.
And I understand all that, but,
And we've been advised on what statute says.
yeah,
We've been advised on what your potential conflict is.
I don't understand the conflict.
Well, then it will be explained to you if it comes to that.
Well, that's fine, but.
I mean, you try and make a separation between your role as a trustee and your job as a supervisor.
There is.
But the argument is going to be made that your motivation as a supervisor to get this county back above board financially was what motivated you to levy an assessment in these drainage districts for something that happened 9 years ago.
So that's where they are separated legally. And that's where the other budgetary conversations that we're having for the county, general basic, rural basic, all that stuff, it is not correlated. Those dollars that were spent for that project.
It's not supposed to be, but then you answer to me, I guess, where the shortage is going to come from when these landowners don't pay.
My answer is that shortfall was created when the assessment was short in the beginning.
Obvious statement. That
So
doesn't answer my question.
The only remedy to that is, the only remedy that I'm aware of to that is an assessment to the landowners to cure the deficiency in the account. If I was aware of another way, then I would be saying
I
that.
think technically that's probably the right answer, but I think you and I both know that's not the complete story. And the reason we know that is because the analysis of this indicates we're $99,000 upside down compared to where it's supposed to be today, based on what has been in place for the last 9 years. So either the original $2.114 million assessment didn't go out, or we've got delinquent taxpayers,
That's what
or
I'm saying.
$99,000 has disappeared somewhere.
That's what I'm saying, those numbers.
And you and
also
I
have to
both know
correlate.
that these funds that come in from these tax assessments for this drainage district get commingled with everybody else's, and warrants get paid off in a FIFO basis.
They are paid
I'm-
off
I'm
in
pro-
that basis,
I'm
but
gonna,
they're not
I'm
correlated.
gonna
They're
surmise,
separate.
Kyle, that there's a high probability that funds that came in from this district were used to pay warrants for another district and vice versa.
That should never happen,
Shouldn't,
and I'm not aware of any of that.
but I can't explain, and it'd be really helpful, I guess, if we were given an accounting.
But I did 2-second math and came up with basically the number we assessed out, based on the number that
Well, see,
your
that's the other,
professional said was short.
that's the other concern that a lot of our landowners have.
That it's simple
Two
math.
second math doesn't work.
But my point
I mean, it's
is,
a $2 million project, we're willing to overlook a certain amount of fudge factor. But we're not just gonna accept a random $350,000 assessment.
My
Part
point is-
of which is for repairs that we've already been assessed for. And the other part of it is that this project was for a repair project that both the North and South Main were participating in. And now you're coming and asking the South Main to absorb 100% of the interest expense that you failed to charge 9 years ago.
I don't know any sort of split or combination between the North and South Main, so that is outside of my wheelhouse.
Well, then you need to get educated. I mean, it's approximately an 85 to 15% split.
And I was not aware of that because of
And
the
how,
history.
I don't mean to be offensive, Kyle, how can you be a supervisor and approve an assessment to our district of $350,000 without knowing that? Whose judgment are you trusting?
I didn't even know that it was combined. I was told it was just the South Main that had the project. So if the information I was given was incorrect, then I would blame the supervisor that told me that. But the fact is, I didn't know that there was a 85.
And I have to give you a lot of pass here because you weren't part of this problem.
Well, I didn't
And
start till 19, so that's a long ways after this.
A decent amount of time after it, yes. I mean, I acknowledge that.
Would have had 15, 16, 17, and 18 assessments.
And here I sit, you know, presented my concerns today, made my request to put this on a hold, and Roger, who was the primary responsible one at the time for this project, walks out the door without having this conversation.
You can take that for what it's worth.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not just me, it's all of our landowners that have these perspectives.
I get that, and I understand the
And
situation.
it's not just my district. I've had, in the last 2 weeks, I've had people from 5 other drainage districts call me and want to talk about their problems.
If I wasn't aware of the situation, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I am painfully aware.
And I pride myself on trying to be a fair-minded, reasonable individual. But, I mean, one thing I just will say, my genetic lineage does not allow something to be crammed down my throat that's unpalatable.
So, and I know you just said 2-second math doesn't work. I agree with that, and it's not 2-second math that gets us to the exact dollar figure that we had, but it gets close enough that it's a reasonable explanation. That's my point, is if you take that interest expense from the original project that should have been assessed and do 6% interest over roughly this time period, simple math gets you exactly where we're at right now.
Well, okay, I mean, I can't argue with that generalized statement, but my contra-logical argument to that is it's the same point of view that many people had in frustration with that meeting on July 30th, is that simple math on a $2.114 million project indicates that you're asking 6% interest on, I forget what it was, like 26 months or something like that, or whatever the number, way longer than what it should have been in a simplistic format.
And
that's why,
because it didn't all get paid, so
That's-
then you have stuff that carried for a longer period of time.
yeah,
And that's the situation. So the stuff
and
we
so
paid for-
that's the question, Kyle, who's responsible for that? We as landowners didn't make that oversight. You guys as trustees did.
Yep,
And now you're asking us to come back and be the one to remedy that mistake. I guess the way I was raised, the people that make the mistakes are the ones that need to own up to it and be accountable to it. And I think, again, if if somehow we're able to get a consensus on this, and I can get all of my people in this district to agree on something here, you guys ought to send us a thank you card in email. Because I don't think we're under any obligation.
I think we would probably disagree with that, but at the end of the day.
Then it may take a neutral third party to reach that determination. That's what I'm saying.
Possibly, but.
Either as an individual or as a larger consensus. And I think once one individual does it, it'll be a larger consensus.
Not totally against it.
I don't know.
And that's the problem. We've got, we got smart people in this district that don't use roundabout figures.
Show what you talk to, because who knows what he would have said.
So they asked me to do
I do need to get.
So I think you guys need to talk English.
Good.
see what they come up with.
And then
Unfortunately.
my invitation is open to talk
We're
English.
talking many times.
And, and this guy will be in town on Friday. He lives in Kansas. I guess he's more liberal minded than I am.
Well, they did a hell of a lot of time.
He's trying to make the argument that we should pay the $230,000.
Yeah, what they did didn't work.
He is on
But
that
they don't have it all.
Yeah.
Actually, I think, and I thought yours would get bigger over there.
Any avenue that landowners want to take, whether it's individual or in a group, is up to you guys, but as a trustee, I don't see any other solution to solving this except an assessment. And as hard as that is to say, I think that's reality.
Yeah,
If you guys pursue litigation, then we have to duke it out there.
I understand your perspective, but understand you're the trustee and you're the causation, not you personally.
I understand that, and that's why
That's the wrestling match that the landowners are having with this, is
I
that
spent a lot of
we
time.
thought we had a project that was completed and the costs were known, and then now 9 years later, this arises, and there's too many people that have a hard time accepting.
I get that, and I'm doing everything I can to explain it, and
And I
make sure
am
it
too,
doesn't happen.
because I understand where the origination of this came from. I understand that it has to be resolved.
Yeah,
The question is who, and how much?
right, but
And if I can't, that's just it, if I can't get a consensus, or I can't convince.
the hard part is, I don't know how I justify, as a trustee, how I justify delaying the assessment when that's an outstanding bill.
See that?
We had two districts
I want,
last year
Kyle,
specifically.
I want you to think for a second about what you just stated, because your concern does not come from a perspective of the trustee. It comes from our
does.
perspective as the supervisor.
No, it comes from my perspective as a trustee, because we had two districts last year. One of them wanted to delay their assessment and wait till we heard back from our insurance company whether anything would be covered by them or not. We did that, we delayed the assessment for one, the other one paid theirs. The one that delayed is now paying an extra year of 6% interest, but they're still getting that assessment this year.
But are you speaking from the context of the total effective cost at that point in time? Or just the interest rate?
I'm speaking from the context of they're paying an additional year of interest from last year to this year. Because
What's the principal amount?
Go as big as we can.
400,000.
What was the project cost?
It's damn small.
Want to say around 2 million?
Yeah, it's
So see the situation here, and I'm just gonna tell you, from our perspective, we don't care.
I don't know
Because
if
that's
all
not
those
our
people
problem.
have it.
Well, that
As of-
district asked for it to be postponed.
The same thing I did today.
Now they wish that they paid it the year
Doing
before.
on a Tuesday morning.
I don't know that situation, I don't know their pathway to their decision making parameters.
Nope.
All I know is what our perspective is.
Well, if you listen to the guys that manufacture a lot of that, they're all over the
The county's in a neutral position.
believe that
The assessment was made.
So the county is
Yeah,
not
well,
involved at all.
I have a hard time-
Continue to say
That's
that.
it.
I have a hard time not using spoons on hot plastic.
I do too.
If
It's already supported on the bottom of your
can show that funds came
I'm
in
following
for this
the
drain and
state
went somewhere else,
specification for how they use, how
that's
they
why
say
it would be an
to.
issue, and it would be.
What I'm doing is following what their bedding
If
requirements
you
to go
can
under a
prove
paved
that,
road.
yeah, because.
Is, because they don't want the stuff to fail under a paved road,
I
so.
just listen to the guys like ADS and Fracco out here, and you go talk to them, go talk to the guy at Fracco that's been in it all his life, and he's like,
I don't know.
I don't,
I've done
nobody
a
even
lot of
really
tile
needs to know about that.
that's 10, 20.
If that
years
happens,
old.
somebody needs to know about it.
Contractors put in
That's-
the old
yeah.
days.
That's my principle
I
as a
think,
supervisor.
I think over the
Because they
course of
didn't have
time,
the
two things are gonna happen.
Yeah.
All of these issues will
Every
be
damn
resolved.
one's over.
yeah.
The county,
Yeah.
or the collection of drainage districts, there's still gonna be a small
Well, I
amount
think
of
you got a
stuff.
4-inch
Nobody
tile
even
in
gonna say
96.
this.
That's what I think.
That's my opinion.
That's my
Yes.
opinion
I'm
too.
not, I'm not educated, so.
On a
And
Smith
so,
tile, I don't think it makes any difference.
over the course of this process, it's getting resolved out.
Plastic tile, you should have a damn good glue on your
With
machine.
the
Yeah.
exception of that,
Yep,
what do
Same
we
way
call
with
it?
tire plow.
yeah.
I tell my kid, that damn boot gets built up every year.
Rubbing mat,
You get a
whatever.
nice V in there, and you don't have that
It'll
problem.
hopefully get to that.
And I think it takes in water.
If there is.
It does.
Because
one-
what
you
someplace
have
else
that
can easily come back.
Well, tile all takes water.
But my point is, I don't think it did, and that
But
is
he's a
assuming that
drainage
everybody.
Yeah.
Well,
got it
and-
right.
He can
And
argue
But
with
if I
you.
just did, that's
Based
something
upon the
else.
experience.
We put it this way,
With this, that you can
My
have the slightest
assurance
concept
is
that things
the
done correctly.
state specification.
On that
We're not
side,
driving trucks over
I'm
it.
thinking about the
Farm.
structure.
Well, right, yeah.
Sent
We
out.
want it to take water, we don't care about how it holds up, we want it to take water.
Well, you want it to last.
Well, I will,
Right?
I will.
You know,
It's
so
put in those
that's-
funds. So
that's
what I'm
where-
saying is, was it done
I would
wrong
rather
with the
take
treasurer's office?
that,
Let me just ask,
their word for it, than rely on
This is a list of outstanding stamp
the
warrants.
manufacturers to back their
Oh, I
products.
wouldn't. I
Summer
wouldn't.
Reitzel's.
I don't know.
Yeah.
This was
Them
presented.
guys that have been in it for 100 years, they laid a lot of tile.
And
Anecdotally, I've
these were
seen
known about, mostly their crop
the spoon
damages.
method,
And,
I've seen failures
they
of
were-
that,
They were
and I've
reported
seen
to everybody, that that's what they
manufacturers
should be
not
getting. And
not back
So I
warranties
know all
on
these
things like
people
that,
personally.
so.
I know that their finances aren't a
Spoon
mess,
on
they're not bankrupt, they're not in jail.
contractors should have
There's
been-
only one person.
Just
Well,
bullshit.
yeah, right.
And you can't use a 24-inch spoon on an 18-inch tile.
There's
Never re-
a lot to be said about that too.
They effectively
I've
managed.
seen spoons being
But the
used.
rest of us,
The tile's supposed to
they
fit in
received them.
Pretty snug.
pretty snug, and I've
They were
seen
never
gaps
sent
on
out.
both sides.
Yeah.
Now, what was the
This is
object
my
of using
farm.
the spoon?
Yeah, because you didn't
Well,
need it.
then you essentially made a square bottom trench again.
Yeah.
So you
Trust
did
me when
all
I
you
say,
did.
my
So-
mother
and
was not a
I've
slouch
seen that.
financer.
Yeah, I agree
This
with that.
has not been redeemed
And I
as an
just-
operator. We have
Yeah, well,
forgotten
and that,
that this
classic,
existed.
that,
And I know
it
that
all
this
comes down to
individual
its
confirmed with me
installation
before the
and
meeting on the
the proper
30th, that he was hoping by God,
I mean, there's nothing around it.
pretty damn soon, he was gonna get paid for his crop damages.
Pretty sure.
So he would have the warrants, right?
These people have their warrants. My question is,
It's
how
like
did it
30%,
stand?
it's 30-some% of that tile.
That would have been approved by the board at the time.
Probably was.
I believe
I mean, that's the process, that's all I can tell you, that's the process.
24
And
inch
that's all on our drainage claims every month.
plastic.
So,
We do drainage.
so it's a process for the treasurer.
And once it
to just go ahead and
fails,
bring
it's
us a
really
sample
failed.
warrant to us and present it to them by the owner.
We're a 6-inch tile that fails, it collapses.
I don't have a
No,
lot
so
around it.
warrants are bills that are.
I have a hard time arguing
Stamped
against
drainage warrants.
Yes,
reinforced concrete.
What question do you not
and the fact
understand?
that's what the board is approved.
Yes, and they're all approved, there's no
Yeah.
question
that
about
The
that.
material itself.
My question is,
the-
how
Yes.
did these warrants
The,
get stamped without the owners being in possession of them?
flexible pipes,
So
they're
when we,
reliant on the
when we
soil
approve the
and
bills
the
here, the
envelope
checks are
that
physically
encompasses them
sitting
for
in
their
the
strength.
courthouse yet, then they get mailed out.
concrete
They're
pipe
supposed
is-
to get mailed out.
I hate to say it,
just bluntly,
I-
it's kind of idiot.
Not only
I
did
don't
it didn't
know.
happen, but somehow they also got.
It's a
It covers up for a lot of laws.
Right, yeah.
Well,
It
the
can
stamped
bridge
warrants
the
is
gap
the
of
name
some
of it.
bad.
That's, it's not like you stamp them, it's
The
not
only thing I see
physical
was
stamp.
cement.
Okay, but that
Saw
effectual
connect-
statement,
Connections, they.
whether it's
screw up.
physical
They
stamp.
ruin a
It's the
very
date
good
with
piece
which
of pipe.
infrastructure
Yeah,
grew.
that's
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
In order
I've
for
seen
that to
some
happen,
hack jobs
somebody
on
should
plastic
possess
too.
it. In other words, a contractor
Better chance.
can't
Yeah,
sit with
but
a pile
the-
full
the
of
whole
warrants
saws
in
on
his
those
desk for
go
6
up.
months,
I can
decide
assure
to
you,
go
it's
and
in the-
collect a payment for them and want 6 months worth of
For
interest.
people.
They stop approving
Not just
interest
me.
when they are called in.
Correct.
Well, and
When
But
did they
that'll be a
start
conversation
accruing
When
interest?
they're issued, but when they're issued,
because I don't wanna
they should be
recommend
mailed
a
out and you should have
type
possession when they're
or
received in the mail.
construction method. that-
They're not
It's
sitting
not
at
mine.
the courthouse waiting
So
for
if
someone to
there's a
stand here and
preference,
pick
if
them
there's
up.
something people
No, they
want.
get, I mean, they're supposed to be mailed out.
Mailed
We'll
out.
do it,
That's what I'm saying.
but I
In
don't
this
want it to be
case,
my
I
call
can't
or
prove
a
it.
call that's
but
made
none of these got mailed out.
retroactively.
Well, who makes the best
I
plastic?
can't speak to that.
I'm not
I'll be
getting into
back
that.
at 16.
My only
I
point
won't,
is you
no thank you, I talked to too many of them guys to be even off record, on record, that have it said,
every day or every week here.
whoever gives you the best price
You
is who
can't
makes
stand
the
here today
best,
and have the slightest
is who makes the
concept
best,
that
as far as I'm
it's
concerned.
handled the way that it was supposed to.
Well, no, not necessarily,
On
but.
that side and whether things got mailed
I
out
actually
or
always put
didn't.
Northern Plate before Northern.
I
Plate.
don't
had
have any
questions
reason to
that
know
all
if they
that
didn't get
friction
mailed out.
I
I mean,
mean,
I know people lose them and
It
stuff over
always-
the
it
years.
always
I know
invokes
Nick has
me
said there is a
the thought
process,
that
if you
in,
don't have it, there's a
In the movie
process to
Armageddon,
get
when they're
copied.
taking off in the
and
space
prove
shuttle, and the
ownership
whole
and
thing's
stuff.
rattling. I think it's.
There are ways to
Buscemi-
remedy the fact that
Steve
you don't
Buscemi's
have a
character
physical
that says,
paper in your hand.
how's it make you always feel that
But
everything on this
the
was,
Day that it was issued.
bid and built by the lowest
Should
bidder?
I can't.
talking.
But you're not gonna convince me that all the people that are on that list were such poor business managers that nobody
I don't
took,
know,
nobody
I think
thought
you're
upon
right, too.
themselves to take that warrant that they got in the mail
Everybody's
and
thinking
go
the
cash it.
biggest we can go and doing the whole.
You're not gonna convince me. I know my own
Surprises
parents
me.
wouldn't have done that.
If they asked the question if they
Actually,
could cash or not, and they were told, no, you have to wait till it's called in, they, I don't know if they would have safe or but
From,
They've been.
Bruce enjoyed
you
Jones.
can,
The
you
people
can
that
take it to a bank and sell it to a bank.
And,
or to a
and
private
really, I mean, it's one of the more articulate.
But, I mean,
It was
It
good.
was one of the most articulate
It's
letters
like,
I wouldn't call it
it's out of
an
our
objection,
control,
it's
what
just a
happens.
request for
so like,
clarification.
and
And
whether
they're
that's
in
2016
support
or
of-
today, I don't know.
They don't
I don't
specify
care.
the things, but they're more favorable on the half inch or 3/4 as opposed to. Their comment was, good, better, and Cadillac.
We should.
Was kind of the thought. Better was.
In all of September.
Good enough.
What, right, was where they were leaning, but they don't specify a stopping or.
Grade are enough cover on that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's,
I'm,
the matter,
We appreciate how much.
the matter is not one of, it was just, it's always just been small.
You had enough cover for
Oh,
Plastic.
right.
This doesn't happen.
that's what I focus on every time you.
But it's, I mean, the notes say RCP,
Like business, we're opening up a.
find and replace
Already.
with, we did it.
It's already been.
Plastic.
There's some places.
And it doesn't. What's that? Not right now. That's what we're here for.
I can tell you,
It's probably unfortunate that you've already done anything.
So,
it's like brand new.
Yeah, I've never run in, yeah, I've never run into much plastic tile.
No, but I mean, the old county tile, we've never, it's just not big enough. It's like brand new.
It's not big enough.
It needs to get a little bit longer.
Decently deep for what it is. So
Yeah, if he starts picking up painting, I'm gonna be like, something's going on here.
Most of it's always clean. It's like brand new.
There
Glass.
was our P30 where.
That was good. That's why, who made it?
I have spoken, Doug's gonna be here to watch over. I have some
$365
background. We had shots on it. As far as if it were just Casco carrying these flows, we'd be fine. As far as drainage capacity for just
Appreciate
this
it.
area,
Yeah, I made it
it'd be all right. I didn't.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
like DOT.
And the fact that they're like, okay.
But I
picked
part
up,
time living.
which is tells you what.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't seem sort of fall.
I think that's.
No.
Right, they are.
And they're still making
I
money.
would a couple years ago.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Well, now the price is.
I have my doubts on its, on whether it's sized appropriately.
So is that
And we're not gonna put less
Well,
towel.
Well, that'll be-
Hey, this is too much.
We may, depending on Doug's thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's in charge of the.
They're making lots of money.
We may, outlet downstream of it, or if there's a soon enough plan for replacement of that culvert, it'll be upsized with resurfacing of the road. But we're not, I like the lecture, we're not, we just spend good money just to.
The other thing we never talked about, or we should talk about, the road there, the dredger, this thing, you got what went in before, but still.
Oh,
Maybe
he did.
that's something we can't do.
Yeah.
Well, that's, hey, Doug, that'll be another discussion. Doug and I met and discussed that. So, yeah, we'll get into, there's a number of things I've got on my to-do list of discussions. Morning.
Well, that's my drink.
Oh, you leave it in the office here?
Just gonna be tickled.
Oh, I don't know.
Yep. No, it's not.
My drink. I lost it. Who knows?
where you live.
It grew legs and walked.
I guess, I don't think it was drinking it up.
Morning.
Oh, I did. Never mind.
Yeah.
For Pete's sakes. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
How many projects you got going right now?
Actively constructing, I wonder, staging to go another
I'd be better off with some.
3 or 4.
I want too much.
I just talked to Tad again, he called me, and told him that we're gonna allow the 16-inch height to go over the casing, we just gotta get some details about the concrete.
We were looking at, Nathan and I were looking into that right before, I just ran out of time before I came up here, so.
I mean, if you can kinda get a detail there.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine a couple feet of overlap
Right.
on that, and then.
We'd like to have some sort of, just reinforcing, I don't know if he can, some fencing, something like that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do
Yeah, no,
it.
we can,
You're
What do I
behind.
know?
I'll look into it, I'll
Just get something that,
Raise cars.
define the concrete a little bit better. Yeah.
yeah.
Get it 139 and 11.
Yeah, I'll,
That's right.
I'll use this
But
afternoon.
yeah,
do some thinking
a
for
certain
staging.
overlap of whatever it is.
Add
Certain
pictures
with
in
the
there.
concrete with some sort of reinforcing.
Probably rewrite some of
Overlap
the
with the
language to make it a
reinforcing
little more
steel.
understandable.
21st century language.
Yeah. Reinforcing.
Right.
Right.
Sometimes makes more sense.
I would imagine we have
Throw an
to
action, it's like,
find
oh,
some sort of
Right.
caging.
Yeah, they don't need to just go to reinforced concrete.
I don't know if that's covered in here.
Just something that gets them.
How to combine that concrete better than start cracking any more
Or hold
places.
it.
It would jeopardize the whole thing. Yeah, no, we can, I will, I'll get that taken care of.
But I don't think that is gonna be a big deal. In all actuality, I think, I mean, you get, we're talking about that pit, you get a couple concrete, you got the concrete to steel, and then you got a joint between the concrete, this may be just a better alternative all the way around.
Probably.
And I thought, it was, for some reason, I thought it was a 54 inch.
Well, you wouldn't be faulted for thinking that, that's what the plan said. But nobody, everything specified is that it should be made, but nobody said no sheets of making.
This is the back page.
They just make, even the 81 type that's coming in on this is, they're bringing in.
Really?
They're trying they've got, running lots of here.
They can't make it in.
Or they could make it, they just aren't. So that's, they're making it just on the west side.
Just don't think it's that anymore. Yes, it's grow.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I know they've got,
that should be.
or is that maybe, but I know. Fairmont would probably.
Alright, has it,
Plan.
just so everyone knows, we have a drainage repair request, you guys can still keep talking if it's quiet, but we'll have a repair request. So has everyone seen that in the packet? Marge, do you have the actual copy? Okay. Carter, do you wanna read that off quick and then we can act on it?
Got request number 95 and DD 40 to be in the town of Whitmore. I've just, as we discussed this spring, to get it televised, see what the issues are.
Yeah. Alright, any questions on it? I entertain motion. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Alright. And we will start this hearing here in a second. Tyler, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, feel free, we'll start here in seconds, so.
I can hook up to this, right? Yep.
Yeah, fire away.
Oh, sorry, I pulled it up. Oh, sorry.
Alright,
Lights would you like to,
Just that first set, probably.
Yeah.
yeah, thanks Doug.
if you need another, just yell.
Yep. We do have 10 o'clock here. What's it?
Button on there.
Oh, to turn it on.
Yeah, 4. Thank you.
We do have 10 o'clock. I would make a motion to open the public hearing for DD4 with lateral 40s and 42 for the tile improvement. Is there a second to that motion? Thanks, Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Our public hearing is open. Thanks for everyone coming down and stuff. Tyler, whenever you are ready.
Yes.
I will turn it over to you for your presentation.
I will get up a map here.
Pull that down a little bit further.
About another foot. There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Just so that we are able to point to something.
Tyler, feel free to start. I'll be right back.
Perfect. Let's go with this one, a little easier to see the watershed boundaries. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks again for being here for the discussion here. This is the public hearing for the engineer's report that was filed in response to a petition for an improvement project that was filed on Drainage District number 4 to review laterals 40 and 42. This district is generally, or rather this lateral portion of Drainage District 40, or 4, early morning yet, generally located south of Sway City. The tile outlets into a lateral ditch of Drainage District 4 near the intersection of P30 and 400th Street. As part of the engineer's report, there was a review of the district and the lateral history for comparisons of existing conditions to what the desired conditions would be. This district was petitioned for in 1902. There was a hearing for the creation of the district in 1903 and officially established in 1907. In 1916 was the report that recommended the sizes for lateral 40 and 42, and From that point on, in the history, nowhere could I find that any additional work or substantial work or any sort of upsizing had ever been completed. So this is now well over 100 years old for a system, which is not uncommon, just one more in the list that we're looking at. For context, I'll point some at the map here. Lateral 40, its outlet is down here, travels this black line until the road crossing at 60th Avenue, and lateral 42 is then this branch tile that comes up from the connection with lateral 40. So if at any time there's a talk of the Y, it's the reference here, and the outlet then is down here with the connection to the blue line, which is the lateral ditch that serves as the outlet for this tile system. There was, in addition to the field reviews and review of the area after this year's rain events, which I'd like to make mention is not normal. This year was severe. It's not normal, just as the 3 years prior of drought were not your typical years. But in addition to the review of the area, which was substantially wet this year, there was also an informational meeting held on this lateral system where it was decided to, in the report, provide the 3 options that the report does provide, which is the 1/2 inch, the 3/4 inch, and the 1 inch drainage coefficient. The capacity of the systems are measured in drainage coefficients, which is the amount of water that can be drained from the landscape in 24 hours period of time. 1/2 inch drainage coefficient that system would be able to drain a 1/2 inch of water over that whole watershed in 1 day's time. Same with then the 3/4 inch and the 1 inch being able to take an inch of rain off of that whole area in 8 days' time. The original capacity of the system was also calculated for a comparison. That is provided in the report as well. The lower portion of lateral 40, essentially the lower 800 feet, which is currently an 18 inch at a 0.08% grade, has a capacity drainage coefficient of 0.078 inches per day, or approximately 16% of the 1/2 inch drainage coefficient. So even by the design standards of the day when this was installed, that would have been substantially small. The typical in the early 1900s, when these were originally designed, was between a 1/4 and 3/8 inch drainage coefficient. So this is rather small. As for the improvement options, the code is clear in drainage district projects falling into one of 2 categories. Either a repair, which is the replacement or refurbishing of a system to the original designed capacity, or an improvement project, which is a project that is intended to increase the capacity of the system. This is, and was petitioned for, the review of an improvement. The improvement option by code then has different nuances, challenges, but challenges aren't really the right word. They're just different criteria that need to be considered when you're looking at an improvement project. One is that improvement projects can be stopped by a process known as remonstrance. That is if a majority of landowners by count owning 70% of the acres by area object, that ends the investigation into an improvement right there, just with landowner input. I think to date, we have received one letter that Marge forwarded me, but I would not call that an objection. It has some questions that I'd like to address as we get into this, but to date, I have not seen any objections on this project. Objections then would need to be filed in writing and be signed to be valid. Second, with improvement projects is that the code deems the benefits that a system provides to have been substantially changed to the point where the old schedules are not equitable, which requires then a reclassification of benefits. That would reassign the project costs based on benefit, which is, the way we handle those is with calculations and numerical values for location relative to the facility, as well as your soil types that are being farmed and what the land is being used for. The third consideration for improvement projects is that, and this is one that could be worth discussing, has been included in the report as well, is that the certified farmed wetlands that appear on wetland determinations will likely be judged to have been converted. That carries with it severe penalties through the farm program if those lands are continued to be farmed after conversion, and if those lands are not mitigated for. There are wetland bank credits available. I believe the last time I checked, they were $15,000 per acre. And those are a way of offsetting the conversion of farmed wetlands. However, the obtaining of those credits and the penalties for inaction are not something that the district has an authority to be concerned with. There is nothing in the code that keeps mitigation credits from being considered as a project cost. That is something that the district can decide based on discussions and thoughts, be considered a project cost, but it is not the district that obtains those credits, and it's not the district's responsibility to obtain those credits. That would still be the landowner's responsibility. Plus, the district wouldn't know the final verdict on the case of conversion, as the district is not even able to get the certified wetland determinations in the first place. There are, from the determinations that we received, wetlands present within the proposed project area. Those are the red areas, the red ponded areas on the maps here. The green denotes, at the time of the report, the wetland determinations that we had received. In the cost estimates, there is an area for those wetlands. Again, at the time of the report, it was 9.87 acres had been reported to the district. I should touch on two with, in the event an improvement project goes and there is a required reclassification, that is also the time that annexation would be reviewed so that the entire area that is benefiting from the facilities and the improvements would then be responsible for their benefit of the system. Annexation and reclassification are two separate reports. They are two separate hearings. Annexation and reclassification are often done at one hearing. However, those areas and benefits are not set at this hearing. So the watershed and what those split benefits are, that's typically an end of project consideration. Also, under the drainage code, the Iowa Code Chapter 468 that governs drainage districts, the payment of projects can be done in installments. There is interest that is applied for the waivers or the deferral of those payments. The code states that for those deferrals, it can be no fewer than 10 and no more than 20 years. So that is something to be considered. The rate and number of years is then set by the trustees in the event that a project proceeds. Any questions at this point on that? Else, the report has 3 different coefficient sizes in it, and the recommendations or the options with those 3 have for both the total replacement of lateral 40 as well as the total replacement of lateral 42. So again, improvement of this as well as improvement of that. However, I recognize that there's an infinite number of possibilities out here, some that make more sense than others as far as distance or size of potential consideration, and now is the intended time to talk all of that out. It's not the county's system, though the Board of Supervisors governs over as the trustees. It's not my district, it's the landowners. So we want to do and be steered in the direction of the desire of the landowners. I suppose at this point, there was a letter filed. I can go through this. This is from Nisley and Nisley, representing the Jones Family Trust. This office represents the Bruce and Joy Jones Family Trust, which owns land in Section 35, Sway Township. The proposed project will result in a very large assessment on their land. In a conversation with Bruce Jones, he wants to relay some points. And I think just as I go through these bullet points, I will answer them or provide my thoughts as we go. We discussed whether this is a knee-jerk reaction to the flooding experienced this year, and I assured him that this issue has been going on for some time. With that being said, he still would like consideration to be made with an eye towards the weather patterns. The previous 2 years, we did not see much flooding/ponding as we had this year. Does the engineer know of any long-term studies which could provide guidance? That is a very prudent question, and one that there has been discussion of design considerations in recent years. What we are finding is that weather patterns are becoming more severe. You are getting longer periods of drought, mixed then with longer periods of rain, and the rain events are coming heavier when they do come. I have seen upticks in what design storms their intensity is being considered. So while I would not call this a knee-jerk reaction to this year, because I think the petition was actually filed before the severity of these rains, larger and bigger drainage systems, especially with the farming practices of today, are recommended. The Iowa State University recommends for areas with good surface drainage that you consider the half-inch drainage coefficient, all the way up to the 1 inch for areas that are impounded. This has been an issue, I would likely say, since the creation of the district, or the lateral system, because of its size. So that is my thought on that. The last improvements were in 1916, which was generations ago, and he understands that improvements need to be made to bring laterals up to a higher standard. Is there an option to divide the work into 2 or 3 projects? There is always the opportunity to split work up, so long as you're not trying to hide work limits so that the district isn't informed, but that's not the bulk of this question here. My recommendation for any consideration of splitting work would be to do as much as you're comfortable with the first time to see if it makes the difference that you intend for it to make, as with inflation and the uncertainty of material costs, nothing ever seems to go back down. Even if construction costs held steady, which is very unlikely that they would do, doing a project in 2 or 3 instances would result in the payment of additional mobilization. A contractor is going to want money to load his equipment up and to get back out there. So if all else was equal, a project the second time or third time does have costs associated with the top. So my recommendation is, again, do what the bulk of the difference, as much as you're comfortable with the first time, and don't subject yourself to more time delays as well as additional mobilization costs. Cost versus benefit. Obviously, the big assessment needs to be viewed as being spread across all his land within the district. However, the ponding on his farm this year amounted to less than 10% of his acres. When you make your decision, please keep in mind the cost benefit to the owners. I believe that is just more of a blanket statement to the trustees and the other owners in attendance. Annexation. The land in section 35 is a majority of the ground being annexed into the district. While we understand that the topography of the soil shows the ground flowing that way, much of the ground is over a half a mile from the end of the lateral. Additionally, according to the map on page 37 of the engineer's report, there is ground in the northeast corner that is outside the model watershed, but within the assessment boundary. If you annex the other ground into the district, can we assume that you will drop the other acres from the assessment boundary? Annexation is, again, a separate hearing and a separate item to be discussed. If on the annexation boundary there are areas that landowners would like to have discussions on, any information that I can be provided with helps in that discussion. What this boundary is based off of is surface flows and the district facilities and anywhere where water is able to flow that I, from a field review standard, can gain. So culverts, bridges, things like that. As far as private tile systems, I do not know where those are. I'm reliant on the landowners to provide that for any changes to and any consideration to those systems that flow in other directions. Else, this is based off of all of the best material and field reviews that I am able to provide. Regarding the question of the assessment boundary, There is a dashed line that is on this map as well. The red, of course, is the watershed area that flows to this facility. The dashed boundary is what the existing assessment schedule is. Because that doesn't come with a hard map that shows what the considered boundary is, it follows the parcel lines. But only the area that is within that is currently being assessed for that benefit on that schedule. So regarding the question of if that area will fall off, it already has. The parcels are just for the sake of showing which ones are in, which ones are out. But it doesn't take into account what area is and is not on that existing schedule.
Tyler, to clarify there, you could, like, the acres that are not benefiting are currently not paying.
Correct.
It's an acre split within the parcel.
Right, yes. But on the assessment boundary map, it's just an on-off case.
Yep.
But that's not how it functionally works. 3 options / drainage coefficients. My father always said it only costs a little more to go first class. But in this instance, we see the 3 options as good, better, and Cadillac. We would encourage you to look at the 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch options and discard the 1 inch. That is, of course, a matter of district preference, landowner preference, and then the decision of the trustees, but that is a very noted statement. Reclassification. We are not opposed to this process as long as it is done openly and results in a fair and equitable distribution of the costs. Reclassification, again, is done as a mathematical formula of amount of the facility you use, how close to the facility the land is, what the land is being used for, its area, and its wetness based on soil types. Those are used to take as much human subjectivity out of it as possible and have it be strictly objective. Those numbers are then also vetted by 2 commissioners that are appointed by the trustees. They must be landowners in the county having no interest or not being related at all or owning ground in this area to vet and make sure that those numbers seem and are fair and equitable. The report then from those commissioners is filed with the trustees, who have the final say on the fair and equitableness of that schedule at a public hearing where everyone is able to see those numbers and know. So I would say that the process is very open and does result in the fairest and most equitable distribution of costs. Interest rates and waivers. As you consider your options, here we would encourage you to set an interest rate as low as possible and consider a period longer than 10 years. Not sure if the trustees care to weigh in, but on something of this magnitude, I've typically seen the 20-year installations be very strongly considered. In a conversation with Tyler Conley, he expressed concern with the outlet into the open ditch and whether the culvert under 80th Avenue would be big enough to handle the increased flow and the higher drainage coefficient. It would be embarrassing to spend all this money and end up with an outlet that is limiting. We would encourage you to have an engineer study the outlet and culvert capacity before proceeding to a bid levy. Doug and I met and had a discussion about that culvert crossing. Do you have anything you'd like to say regarding?
I guess what we talked about was looking at the capacity of that ditch and seeing what kind of additional flows there are and if there is a need for a different structure or additional structures. The road department will take care of that. So.
Is there any possibility of taking it across the road and dumping it on the east side?
There are options available for that, and Tyler and we talked about that as well. You could go east and cross, is that 80 Avenue? And then go south across for whatever street it is,
Yeah.
dump it in
That
past there.
That in my mind takes the question
Yes, I mean,
completely out. The only thing would be being able to adequately serve the lower parcel here, without, if we made that.
They all pattern tiled last year anyway, they put their own main in.
Okay.
They pattern tiled that whole 80.
So we could do that. In my mind, it makes the most sense to do it that way. It takes the question completely out, even if that culvert is upsized. It is worth noting too, that even though we are talking, it'd be 2 road crossings there instead of 1, the road crossings of drainage district projects are the responsibility of the entity that owns the right-of-way for those roads. So that is not then a district expense, but those are.
You'd eliminate one road crossing, so it only had one.
Well, right, I mean, it would be, instead of 1, it would be 2, because you're not going across, you're 1 and then 2. But, that additional road crossing is not the responsibility then of the drainage district. The ground in section 35 has been in the Jones family since the late 1800s. The family's intent is to maintain ownership for future generations. Bruce understands the purpose of drainage districts and values their impact on the ground. His ancestors paid their fair share, and he is ready to pay now for the good of future generations. He supports the project, but asks that you consider the points detailed earlier in the letter. Sincerely yours, Michael Nisley.
How many feet did you guys put in 23?
That's something
A lot. 30,000?
I don't have an answer, I don't know what he's.
That was a bunch. I mean, we've now added that on this tile too.
It was draining there anyway.
Well, to the point, you got a lot more branch tile now than you ever had before.
That was just the main we put in.
Oh, I thought you put a bunch of branch into it. Oh, so you,
Well, we have a little bit prior in some areas, but that was what was put in, was just to replace the private main up there.
that was what, 12 inches?
Like that, you know.
So with that has to date been the only letter received. Again, I'll turn it back for questions. If a project is to be considered, it would be not only important, but necessary that we know the extent, both the length and size, what laterals it is desired to be completed on, as well as I have taken to asking the preferred tile material, whether that be a reinforced concrete pipe or if dual wall plastic is something to consider. We've bid alternates in the past to be able to know both prices. However, if one is an absolute, a must-have, I'd like to know that before I get into and have the questions from manufacturers. So, if there's any questions or comments, direction from
Any landowners have any thoughts you'd like to share, questions, opinions, anything?
thoughts towards the potential of mitigation for wetlands being considered as a project cost. That is something important as well. That would, in my mind, simply be an additional damage that would be paid out, much like the crop damages.
I know I'm still waiting on two to come back,
Okay.
and I told you that.
Right.
I got most of them, but I touched base with everybody that I know. There's two that should be here anytime.
Okay.
Will the plastic last as long as the concrete, or does anybody know that answer?
That plastic hasn't been around, they started making and installing that in the 70s. So none of it's been around long
None of
enough.
it's been replaced since the 70s?
Well, I mean, there's instances, but if you were looking for a prime case for the two to be considered, this is a good landscape. You've got a deep enough outlet, you've got cover, and you have the ability to try it here. I would say with the bids that have been coming in, if you're considering the dual wall plastic to concrete, you can get some pretty favorable prices. If you're considering more of the polypropylene plastic pipe, which is the stiffer gray pipe that's made, those for consideration are pretty well a wash with concrete. But as far as the longevity, I would like to say that it will have the same amount, but as far as being able to point to actual real world applications of it, I know how long concrete lasts, I don't know how long. Now, to that point, the system out there, the old clay, is still in relatively good condition because of the landscape that's there, and it's lasted 110 years, so I would have every anticipation that modern construction equipment and materials would last much longer than that. But I would, in my mind, the concrete without question, reinforced concrete without question, would last potentially indefinitely.
The price difference between the concrete and the plastic, can you pick up a 1/4 inch coefficient for the same price? You guys would know that question, I don't. Not that much different.
Probably
No.
not, you probably won't quite get there, but the last project we saw 60 sub 4, I wanna say it was just shy of a 10% in that ballpark cost savings, and that is with fully bedding the pipe in rock. And that's one thing I've kinda learned looking into stuff with plastic, like the state of Minnesota. They do road crossings with plastic and rock. I wasn't aware of that until I started asking some questions and stuff, but.
And with some more, that's a very, very big pipe.
Right.
With something on a smaller, I'm not as opposed to spoon installation, which then saves you
A lot more.
on rock.
Yeah.
I'm not as opposed to that on manageable sizes. The size we're talking about here is 60-inch. I mean,
Yeah, that was a big time there.
it's big. Here we're still big, but we're not
60.
And there is a substantial portion of that price that was rock, so yeah, if we have soils that justify and can support it, and you can save that rock difference, it would be, you probably would pick up your 1/4 inch coefficient for the same price, maybe even less, if rock's not needed. Or not substantially needed.
Pick up a 1/4 coefficient at the same price, that's a lot of water.
Picking up the difference on the small tile.
No, probably all of it.
Yeah, but the bigger, where you put a lot of rock in, you're not saving a whole bunch.
That's what we just said, if you don't need the rock, if the soils justify it and can
You're not
support it.
gonna put in 40-inch tile and not rock it, are you?
You're asking before tile sizes, Randy, it starts at 18 and the one that goes.
I would account for it, just because I never know what soils are gonna be. It's awfully hard to say without.
It should start as a 14.
No, digging.
Right, without digging or without actually having contractors put numbers to
And I know
Does it end up at 12?
12, his outlet should be a 12, which ain't very huge.
it both ways.
Yeah, and as, I mean, Jack just mentioned this, but 60 sub 4, we had bid both ways, and I guess I would encourage that. I think it's an extra layer of competitiveness, and I guess.
And contractors too.
I think that added a lot of value to that project.
With that, and I'm more than comfortable doing that, especially with we're having the discussion here, if I know that that's what the desire is. A lot of contractors are coming to expect that, a lot of manufacturers are coming to expect that. I would just want to be clear that the allowance of a contractor to, if you had the two alternates, a contractor being able to, because some guys have preferences. So if they wanted to bid one and not the other alternate, that still be considered a valid bid, and the option they don't bid on just be considered a high option of that material type.
And if they use concrete or they use bell tile, I mean, it's not gonna suck any water.
Well, it won't draw like the old one, but the old one is very small. It is tongue and groove, we don't gasket it, the concrete. So they sit snug, but they don't.
And the plastic, we would have the option of perforating. So that is, I mean, we've had smaller repairs that have been replaced with concrete tile, and then people are upset that their field's not draining like it used to because the main tile's not taking water like it used to, so.
What I've always, the analogy I use for the district facilities is that they are the interstate systems. Once you're on it, you stay on it and you go. But the smaller roads, the feeder lines that get your water there, those are the drawing. That's what gets everything to it, and then it goes.
That's private tile.
Right.
Yeah.
That's your private tile. That's your private mains. These are the big heavy lifters to get it off the landscape once it's to them.
Is anyone opposed to bidding the project both ways, concrete and plastic, and seeing where those numbers come in?
Well, first, is anybody opposed to the project?
Well, yeah.
Well, they have time now, if they wanna file an objection.
Yeah, right. Now is the time.
Now's
I
the
mean-
time before we go any further.
And even with the informational meeting I had, I thought the conversation there was that everyone pretty well understood the water situation out there and realized there's a couple big ponds.
And even going to a bid like, we still have the ability to not do the project. Once we see the bids.
Objections would need to be filed today.
Yeah, we need.
So we need
now.
objections today, it's not,
Right. The only thing with the bid numbers is if they came in absorbently high
yeah.
for economical reasons, they can be dismissed.
It-
But as
it would
far
have
as
to
the
be.
landowners for objections, that has to be
Yeah.
today.
For us to stop it at a bid letting, it would have to be extremely outside of what was anticipated. And
Outside of his estimation.
yeah, outside of what we were expecting, yeah. And I don't see that happening, but it could. The other portion to discuss is whether we do the whole system, both laterals all the way, or a partial. There was points of that discussed in the letter.
And that letter came from the
Jones.
Jones Family Trust,
Yeah.
and while they don't make mention, they have size considered, they don't make mention of where to stop. They are, however, up here. So I would infer from that they expect to see that improvement as close to them as possible. And I would think that, I mean, I don't wanna infer too much, but I would have liked for them to have said otherwise if that was the case. It will, this bears repeating, it will be those lands that benefit from the systems that pay on those systems. So everyone in the watershed benefits from lateral 40, just those that benefit from lateral 42 pay on 42. So it would be a split, and the costs in here reflect that for the per acres. But the per acre is not based on what those assessment, the numerical calculations of benefit would become. It could be more than that, it could be less than that. So that's something too to consider for the systems, and understand that those will be lateral 42 because of its length, because of its size would be lesser, but the area that it serves would be lesser too. So you're looking at that for the assessments as well.
So if a person only went part way, it benefits people downstream, and then if it doesn't help the people upstream, the people downstream, I mean, will it still continue on? I mean,
We
no.
still pay upstream even if we.
You pay
Yeah,
upstream,
yeah.
but the split of benefits is different.
Right.
Are you asking if the tile system would still continue on?
Well, I mean, no. If everybody downstream says it's okay after it's halfway up,
Yep.
people upstream says it isn't working,
You
How
could
do we-
still build more.
we still build more. It isn't a vote who opposes or,
Well, we
You'd have to do
would
it.
have to do
You'd
another
have to
hearing
go
and
over
stuff
it.
like this.
Right.
We'd go through the process again, but,
You
you could always add on.
The report's good for 10 years.
You don't have to pay extra engineering, that
Right,
work is
right.
good. But somebody would have to file a request to,
again,
to extend it the rest of it.
Yeah.
Petition, not a.
Or petition.
Right.
Yeah, petition for
For
improvement.
improvement, or petition.
So we would go through the structure of the public hearing process and all that, but yeah, the report would be good for 10 years.
We'd have
So-
another bid letting and then
Yep.
the project again, you know. It wouldn't be a quick thing to turn around and do, but you could do it.
And I guess my thoughts on it, if you look at the coefficient of, like the percent coefficient of the existing tile versus the half or 3/4 or 1 inch, your lower stations, like the segment 1 and segment 2, are the heaviest restricted. So, and even, I mean, we all probably know the area, in the area between Borman, Arndorfer, and Gertis, that's heavily holds water when heavy rain events come. So if we got something up to that point where that could help remove surface water, your other tile upstream would probably function better than it is right now, because you would relieve that pressure right away.
It functions better, but it wouldn't function.
as
You
well
still
as
only
if
got
you
a
went.
10-inch tile on.
Yeah, it's still not gonna function like a 1 inch coefficient, but it's gonna function better than it does today.
You'll get your full benefit out of the system that's being.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Because right
being,
now it's restricted.
it's being hindered by the lower
Exactly.
stations, but
Yeah.
your full capacity of that system is still 26. I mean, at the very upper end, you get to the 1/4 inch drainage coefficient, but you have to go.
Yeah,
Somewhere in history, they tied that second tile onto there, but they didn't make the main, from the dredge ditch to the T bigger.
Right.
yeah.
I don't know where that was, what year it was, but they added that extra leg on there.
Mhm.
So that all play, you know, there are the considerations, like I said, about doing it in your staging.
I know the one that you're talking, Randy, if we do that, I'd like to at least take it to 70th Avenue, for sure, so we can come down to it. I don't care if we quit at that point, it doesn't bother me.
And it would shift, like I said, where the benefit is, because and that would be a change in the reclass and how the project was paid for, because the upper reaches wouldn't then receive that same increased benefit.
So when they put this out to bid, will they bid all three? Will they bid that 3 separate bids, or all one bid, or 2 bids, or what?
Well, I guess that is a question. We can look at, I mean, you start to contractors start to get a little annoyed if you give too, if you ask them to look at too much stuff.
Yep.
Which is why I'd like to limit the coefficient considerations. If there was one that we knew we definitely didn't want, or if there was one we narrowed down to and said, hey, we want to look at this one specifically.
I personally believe if we're spending the money, I would not do the half-inch coefficient. That's my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is. 3/4. Minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna go through all the work, I'm sure up to that why.
And typically what we see is the increase in expense to go from half to 3/4 is a fraction of the cost per capacity. So yeah, you do gain efficiency going up. I mean, we've seen that time and time again.
To get to that why, I almost wonder if it's even, I mean, it's everybody's opinion, but there's so much surface water to get rid of it, almost take a 1 inch to keep up with the surface water, because there's so much surface water up to that point.
You could do a 1 inch up to the Y and
Then
then do
drop it
3/4
off.
on the rest. There's no,
But yeah,
well, you got multiple ways of doing it.
Up to that why, there's so much water.
So what we could do is have alternates for material, and we could get bids on both the 3/4 and the 1. And that would be, I mean, that then puts the final decision back on the trustees for what those numbers come back at. But that could be the direction that's gone, and I have no opposition to that.
I don't know if you guys thoughts are.
Doug, you got a question?
Yeah, the lateral open ditch right now has water in it, and it doesn't look like it's running. Up here that's running is the outlet for this whole tile system adequate? Does a person need to go east and?
Before you guys did that big drainage, the big ditch, that drain used to almost fill to the top. It never got close this year. It never filled this year.
Well, it just looks to me like.
There's visibly grass growing in the bottom because it was cleaned out right as we went into a dry spell. So then that was one of the only places that had water was the bottom of the ditch, so there's grass that grew. But it is, I mean, I haven't had it engineered to survey or anything, but visually, the water level going through the culverts is, when it does actually empty out outside of our heavy rain events, it does rise and fall like I think it's supposed to.
For the sake of final design, if we're gonna go on the east side of that culvert, I'll need confirmation of where we put it anyway. We'll take some shots and review that,
I mean, this is maybe internal discussion of the county, but like if we're looking at boring through the road or replacing a structure through there, depending on the age of the current structure and the height and grade of it and everything, we may be better off to do one structure than have two structures going through relatively close to each other. So, I mean, that's something to consider as well. but
Right, and that's.
Either way.
Right, that's points of final design.
Right.
You're at the bottom of the grade anyhow. It's not like you're
Right.
freeboard, from what I can see.
Right, which has, I mean, there's a calculatable, reduction that equates to, but it's not as significant as it would appear. In looking at all of this, because the whole system is considered moving, the loss it's a wash.
Well, any other thoughts from landowners or?
So I have a question on the mitigation for the wetlands.
Yep.
Without some assistance there, I'm not sure that I'm that crazy about it for that L42.
So I guess this would probably be a good time as a board to discuss, but I mean, I don't have issues considering the wetlands as part of the project when they're known. And we've got a massive improvement like this, but I guess that's
We've never, in the
something
past,
that's-
the board has never done mitigation for wetlands, so it'd be a new territory for us.
And it would, but I'm kind of the opinion that, we've asked for the wetland determinations for a reason, so that we knew what there was and that it could be considered. And I guess in my mind, I don't see it any different than your crop damages. And it's not something that can't be considered by the district.
How many acres is in that area?
9.87.
Yeah, didn't you say roughly 10?
Yeah. And
$150,000.
148
To the rest of the landowners.
well, and those that have those wetlands would be considered, that doesn't take it off of them.
Yeah.
It would be a project cost that gets back assessed onto,
Well,
as a total project
and
cost.
understanding the mechanics of the classification, those are gonna be the areas that are going to pay more relatively compared to their neighbors because of the need for drainage. So it's not entirely washed or passed off on everyone else, it's just fairly split to the district.
I was gonna say, it would be the right time to ask the attorney. I read that mitigations for wetlands was determined to be illegal by the Supreme Court case that just got settled, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I did read it in an article.
Okay.
You no longer have to mitigate for wetlands. I'm not positive, but I think you should probably check on that before we
Yes.
go any further.
Will do.
See if that court case went through or not, and if I read it wrong or not, but that's what I read.
Do you know what court case you're even referring to?
You know, I went through the Supreme Court and I read it on the iPad one night when I was reading.
That it was the ruling that it was illegal to require, or that it was illegal?
Mitigation because it was taking land without compensation. It was determined by the Iowa Supreme Court that it was taking land without compensation. And it passed in the court by a margin of 3-2 or something. But
Okay.
I didn't type it, I already printed out.
Okay.
But it kind of, it reminded me.
Yeah, that would make a difference.
Well,
That
that,
would-
that probably would have been good to know ahead of time so that we all could make an informed decision. Cause if you guys are considering whether you're supportive of the project or not, that's probably important to know.
Yeah.
There could always be a continuance a week to look into that.
I think we should do that.
That's, I mean, I think we've got
That'd be a good idea.
pretty good ideas of what everybody else would like to do. Just a review of the legalities of mitigation.
I guess maybe even just a general discussion from the board here, if wetland mitigation is something that's still required and still to be paid for, is that something we as a board are comfortable including as a damage? Because we could play ifs till we get answers, but I mean,
I guess, the reason we never did it, there was never any ground to mitigate for a long time, now there is. And with the court case that I referred to, that would change all of that. But
Well, and if we're not required to pay for mitigation, then there wouldn't be a damage to turn in anyway.
Correct.
So it would take care of itself if that was the case. But I think we
The
should,
total cost of the improvement project, if you go 3/4 drainage coefficient, what are you, 1.7 million or bigger? It's not a lot of the cost included in the mitigation.
well, and maybe another question would be is, would that be considered required for mitigation if we just went up to the Y? If we only improve it up to that portion and the wetland is above it on another tile line, would it impact those acres or not?
It's different lateral, so it shouldn't be an improvement.
Yeah, but I
It's a
don't,
fine line.
yes, but I don't like to play that game and get into the,
It
I
would
will
be.
choose not to wager an opinion on that, because whatever I say, I'll be wrong. I know that.
Tyler?
Yeah. Be it a separate lateral,
And maybe
that's
that,
an RCS question.
yeah, maybe that'd be a way to get around it a little bit too, as far as the wetland aspect.
You might just have to go private title.
I'm
Well,
afraid,
yeah.
afraid if push come to shove, it would be an improvement for the wetland.
They like I've seen more of them converted that way than not. Yeah, this is saying that the protections, I mean, the synopsis of this says that the protections of the waters of the United States was changed to wetlands that are, let's see, directly next to bodies of water like lakes and rivers. So those that are up in the landscape. I mean, I'd want a more of a legal opinion on that before I said, and banged the gavel and said, yep, we're not mitigating them, and then landowners are without.
I think they deserve a legal opinion before we do the project.
But we wouldn't even be paying that till the end of the project at the completion anyway.
You'd have to get those acres locked in if you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Well, and we'd have to know what would be considered converted, and that depends on, I mean, a lot of the drainage process is, it chases its tail, and what's the best place to jump in ever.
Those acres are being farmed right now, correct? But they're just not prior converted.
They're duck ponds right now.
But they were farmed.
Right, yeah.
If they are deemed to be converted, they would need to be, as before any sort of court case, they would have needed to have been mitigated or left unfarmed to avoid payment penalties.
Right.
But I guess now with the way of the world now, and based on project extents, I think certainly if you did the whole, I think really if you improve any sort of the system, you get into a rather, you can almost be certain that some percentage of those wetlands will be deemed converted. Regardless of where you stop, it's just you've breached into improvement, that's gonna be looked at with scrutiny about the wetlands and conversions. So, if we wanted to get a legal opinion, I'm certainly not opposed to continuance.
We could, it's just how long is it gonna take to get that? And even in our CS, we could maybe ask some more questions about if they can give any guidance on how they'd look at conversion for a partial improvement, but, I don't know if we'll get a definitive answer there either.
And from how I was seeing it go, because the district, again, won't know what is considered, I have what the areas we know about right now are, but we do know that there's 2 more determinations coming in. I suppose my thought was that those mitigations and the if credits are required, be submitted at the end of the project, much like the crop damages. It's difficult to say exactly what those acres would be. The thought was the estimate is the worst case scenario at the time of what it would be for consideration of that. But the district won't know how many of those acres are considered converted, or the ones that are on determinations to come in. We can wait for all of that.
What would the board's thoughts be on making a decision today as far as whether we will allow that damage to be turned in at the completion hearing as a cost to the project, if any costs actually are incurred? Because if the Supreme Court decision says nobody has to pay for them, then we don't gain anything by waiting for any sort of determination. But if we make a decision on whether they'll be allowed or not, it gives landowners the answer of how they should proceed or expect.
My opinion is to proceed, and if it happens, we'll make that determination on mitigation cost at the end of the project like we do with,
I think for discussion's sake and landowners' clarity, I think we need to have some direction today. So I guess I would make a motion that we allow damage claims to be turned in for wetland mitigation costs, if any are incurred at the completion hearing. Would there be a second to that, and then we can have discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Yeah, do you have to close the hearing first?
we can do it during the hearing, can't we?
Can't make decisions.
Yeah, I think you need to close the.
I know we talked to Hudson, I think he said we could do it either way. Typically we close first.
Close the hearing.
Yeah, I mean, we're.
For the benefit of landowner discussion, I think
We can still discuss
You can
afterwards then.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the bulk of it, we're down to.
I know,
Let's just close the hearing, and then we can still discuss.
well, we have a motion and second on the floor, so.
Can you repeat that motion? Allow damage claims to be turned in for mitigation?
For, wetland mitigation costs, if any are incurred during the project. Incurred, yeah.
And you made that motion and Roger seconded, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any discussion here now? I mean, as far as whether the board feels that's good to allow that or is opposed to it or anything, now would be time for that discussion.
This is, just for my clarity, this is kind of new discussion for me. Wetland damages being determined, as it states, determine damage to a wetland as far as what do they mean by damage?
So that it would be turned in as a damage in the completion hearing and stuff, but that damage would be a financial damage to the landowner because they're incurring an expense to mitigate that conversion from wetland status. So
They're converting it from wetland into
to a farmable
Yeah, right,
acre.
right.
So if they're spending $15,000 an acre for a wetland credit,
They have to replace those acres that they're going to drain with acres somewhere else,
yeah,
an equal amount.
yeah, historically.
Okay.
So this Supreme Court, conversation is kind of separate from that, and ideally, that would be positive news. But if any landowner, whether it's any of the ones that are shown on the map or any others, have wetland acres that have to be converted, their cost would be roughly that 15,000 an acre to convert. So the question is whether that's an expense the district pays or whether that's an expense the individual landowner would be required to support on their own.
I've also seen there be a consideration for percentage of cost. So the district being responsible for, say, 50% of that mitigation, just based on how the project goes, the status of petitioner to wetland, the feelings of the system themselves. So there's different ways of considering that forward.
Yep, and that's a good point. If anyone would like to consider a percentage, we could have that in the form of an amendment to the motion, but. Are there any other questions or discussion? Alright, hearing none, roll call vote please.
Plath,
They might wanna know about that. They may wanna know about that.
Yes.
Jerks,
Yes.
Wactor,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nash.
Yes.
Stecker.
Yes. Motion carried unanimous. So now, I guess that should give all landowners some kind of guidance on how the board would treat those potential costs if they come in the future. Are there any other questions or discussion about that?
So based on that map, there's still wetlands to be determined, and it appears that there might be a considerable amount more. I don't know. That would have an impact on the project, depending on how many acres those are. So is there an option to have that determination before? It didn't take that long for a determination, doesn't take that long for a determination to be made.
Yeah, we require that all the lands have determination before we do the project. That has to be done before we can move forward.
I understand that, but can we know the answer to that before we?
Well, you'll have to get that from the NRCS, and each landowner is responsible for getting their own
But I'm,
determination.
yeah,
If you as a
right.
landowner don't get that determination, you take on responsibility yourself.
Yeah.
Then if there's any penalty from the farm program,
I understand
you
that.
could be kicked out of the farm program.
I understand that, but he said that we're waiting for a determination.
Wait for two.
We're waiting for two determinations, right?
The one, I'm pretty sure there's nothing in, the other one, there could be a little bit.
And then find out on this Supreme Court.
But this Supreme Court thing might be going on because it's been over a month since I've turned them in. So that makes me wonder, is that why they haven't returned them?
You'd have to go to the NRCS office and
I'll
talk
have
to
to go
them.
ask you, but they returned it well over a month.
You should go down there and talk to them sooner than later.
The ruling was
Paul.
May 27th. And the court
The
case,
other ones all came back within a few
It says it
days.
was done in 2023 according to the phone.
yeah, 2023, May 27th.
Paul, did you have any on yours, do you know? Okay.
But since 2005, they changed the rules on what's wetlands.
And if you want to know the court case, it's the Sackett decision.
Sackett decision?
Yeah, it was Sackett
Sackett, the
versus,
EPA.
EPA. And from what I read, it's got to be close to a big body of water. Is that what you kind of determined?
Yeah, it has to be,
To still be a wetland, otherwise it's not you don't need a determination.
Second versus Environmental Protection Agency.
So, and hopefully that's the case, and then none of this would even be an issue.
No, it won't be.
So,
Right here it reads, any wetlands that does not connect at its surface to another body of federally protected water does not merit the same degree of protection.
Right.
so then we should be good. It's just,
It's my determination you're good, but you better get a ruling.
The bad thing is if you have a determination made, you probably gotta go back and get another one made now because they'll probably take it back off.
Right.
possibly, yeah. Mhm.
But I think it's good.
Because that one you have,
Right.
used to have one.
Yeah, it is a good news.
Okay. Well, is there any other, questions, comments, discussion about size or material or,
Charlie, you want an inch up to the Y?
I'd like to see it. But
I think an
I'm not
inch
the
to,
sole vote here.
oh, I think an inch to the Y makes sense, but then go to 3/4 from there on. I think would be the most cost.
yeah, I mean, that area gets a lot of surface water.
It's up to you guys.
I could see 3/4 or half past there, but I could also seeing what the system does for a little while and proceed after that too. I mean, I could see both ways, but I do agree, I think an inch to the Y where they connect would make a big difference with surface water.
I think just for my 2 cents and with the letter you received and what the support from the crowd is that there'd be consideration for, you can step down from the Y if you wanted to do the inch to the Y, but I do think that the support merits the continuation of improvement.
And you say this year's extreme, but this year, well, I don't know if it's extreme, but this is 7 out of 10 years for us.
Yeah.
I think you guys will vote for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we went through like 3 of the best years we ever had, the last 3 years. This is more normal for that area.
Yeah.
She's wet.
I mean, Randy, do you have any thoughts for yours, kinda west of Charlie there? Like,
Well, I mean, it was an exceptionally wet year, but
right,
the same amount of drowned out happens for me if it's a 3-inch rain or if it's a 6-inch rain.
Once you're 3 inches.
Yeah. It'll fill up so full and then that's it. And then it takes a month for it to drain. So,
do you think you'd be in a better position if we brought a 1 inch up to the Y and relieve pressure from the current system?
I'm sure it'd help, but it's a guessing game on if it would be enough.
To save the acres?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's unpredictable.
Yep.
If we have the option to keep the old tile, if we take it on, if we take responsibility of it ourselves as a private tile, correct?
Keeping the old system? Yeah,
So,
we could.
I don't know if up to that Y, if you trash the tile out, get rid of it, take a 1 inch up to there, and if we keep the private, run a 3/4 back to a 1 inch at least. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with the old tile, it's just not big.
Oh, when they cracked ours open on ours, it was a perfect tile, no cracks.
Yeah, it's as nice
It's
as
a
it
really
can be.
good tile.
Yep.
And there was no dirt in the bottom of it either.
And I know I would gladly take responsibility.
It
of
was
my
clean,
shit.
yeah. Which is shocking.
Well,
Clean.
and maybe we do that for the whole system and turn the current system over as, just abandon the
I don't know if
current.
first 2 landowners though would want that or not, I mean, they're
But
not
it's up
here.
to, Clint, you're all the way up to the end. I don't know if I'm sure it would help, but it might slow. We might still have drowned out. So I don't know. It's the right thing.
But I was saying keep it, plus have the other one beside it.
You want to turn it to private, there can be no objections by any landowner.
Well, that'd be in addition to the new system. So
The
instead
old
of,
system would have to stay intact. right?
Correct.
If they're putting private in,
No,
It would
so-
stay as a county system
yeah.
unless everybody on it would determine that they don't want it to be a county system. There's a legal procedure that you go through.
Yeah,
It's
so
not
if,
that easy.
it's just abandoning it, but if we built a new system, the whole length, the new system could be the district's facility and we could abandon the old one without physically crushing it. And I think that's what Charlie was asking about.
Because I think you as a county wanna get rid of the old system.
We don't want it because we don't know what's the old system, what's the new system
Correct.
20 years from now.
Well, and it's also a district liability if we keep it, where if you guys keep it as landowners, if you have a washout, you
We gotta
fix
fix
the washout and move on. If we keep it as an old system, then the district as a whole is liable for repairs of that system from now till it's removed. So if we have a
And
new
it's
system,
110 years old, and you've got the
Yep.
brand new one right
Right.
next to it, so it just becomes a district headache, whereas the private landowners may not see that big of a.
Well, I mean, the other thing, we don't have your private tile.
Yeah.
We connected to the new system unless we find it. So if it's hooked to the old system, you haven't gained a damn thing.
Right,
yeah,
That's the other thing that's nice about going back and crushing the old one is that when these get put in, the general order of operations is we pick a site and we stay as close as we can work to it. As it constructs up, we connect everything that we intersect on that one side. When the contractor gets to the top, he starts crushing the old one from the top back and finds everything on the other end
okay,
and crosses across to the new line.
okay.
It's harder, you can still cross across, but of course, anything that we miss then stays on the old system and you're not getting the full beneficial use of what's new. So there's just different caveats to that
yep.
too.
Yeah.
Tell me, this might be a crazy question, but if you're putting a new line in anyway, outside of the old one, why not go around the wetland?
We can, and in a lot of instances we do for the sake of cover. However, that's still, and I don't make the determinations, but I've seen an improvement in the watershed having been considered as converting those wetlands, regardless of whether or not you go through the heart of them or not.
If you improve it, it's still.
Right, whether you go through it or not, you're still contributing to an overall improvement in drainage, which is deemed a draining of that wetland. So in that sense, if you're gonna drain it, you might as well, if it's a drained or not drained situation, you might as well drain it well then, as opposed to avoiding it to try to keep it from being converted.
Makes sense.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Tyler, what's your opinion on going all the way or part way, or what's your view? What's your thoughts?
Well, the report has in it, now please, it's not my district and it's not my money.
Just opinion.
But doing this for 10 years, the report has in it the recommendations it does for a reason. The full lengths of the drainage coefficients for consideration. The thing I've heard guys say forever is you pay for tile whether you put it in or you don't. And meaning you pay for it to construct it and have it, or you pay by not having it. I've seen a lot of districts do themselves harm, and this one's far from considering the worst, which is just repairing the system as it is. I've seen a lot of districts spend a lot of money in pursuit of repairs to systems to avoid the big dollar, the big ticket item of an improvement. And you end up paying for an improvement plus to just have the same system. So this is already more forward thinking than that. Again, I recommend, if you are going to try to stage it, do as much as you're comfortable with now in the first run, because I don't want anybody spending this amount of money and then looking at a system that they're still not happy with. And there's a lot of little capacities out there. Now, does that mean do the one just because it's the biggest, best option available to you? That, I'm not in tune with anybody's financial situations here, so it's hard for me to answer that. But a lot of the improvements that I'm seeing anymore are the 3/4 inch. At minimum is the consideration. And it's as much of a system as can be done at a time as the district can take on. So that's my 2 cents worth as far as trying to decide where do we start and stop.
What's that give you for thoughts?
And I want everybody to know, I'm paid time and material. So what I have in it is how I'm compensated. What I make has no bearing on what the project size is. So I'm not here trying to sell something bigger because then my paycheck gets bigger, right? I'm just, for what I've seen and the experiences that I've been through.
And I could say in my first year on the board in 2019, we had an improvement project on 84, kind of southeast of Algona here. They went to a 1-inch coefficient, and there's some people that were concerned and upset about the price tag of that. And after the rains we've had, there's not any concerns anymore. So, I mean, yeah, there's 100 different ways to look at it, but I mean, I would agree with Tyler, especially in the north half of Kossuth County. Tile's one thing you're gonna pay for one way or the other.
$1,773 an acre for a 3/4 inch coefficient isn't cheap either.
It's not, no, but having,
No, but that's kind of your going rate for improvements these days, especially one of that magnitude.
having an acre of corn drown out isn't cheap either. I mean, I think we all know that here, so.
It is. You know, it's somewhat their decision.
Yeah, yeah.
I hate spending $1,700 of your money on every acre and not having you in favor of it.
But I'd also hate to spend half of that and then guys look at their system and.
Not be.
We spend that money.
Right, yeah, so, you know, it's.
If you do it once and do it right, you won't have to do it again.
Personally, I think it'd be a mistake not to do the whole project
Right.
because you're not gonna get any benefit on the top end, it's gonna be minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So,
It's also, the intent is also that you open it up and it's another 100 years or more
Yeah.
that the system is then not touched.
Yeah, if
Yes,
you pay.
it's expensive and it costs money and it costs more immediately, but it's over.
If you pay for it in 20 years and benefit from it for 100 or 150, you got a lot of extra value there.
and you guys know how much tile you invested already into a poor outlet.
Right.
Why do you think it?
We don't know that, but
3%?
if you have a lot of tile in the ground already, you're not getting much benefit out of it.
Interest, you're thinking 2-3%?
Yeah, and I guess just before we close the hearing, Tyler, you wanna go through a summary of actions that we could or should take as far as discussion wise, then everyone knows the things we talk
Yes.
about. An interest rate is one of those, time is one of those, or waivers, so if you wanna
Yes,
give an
so
overview.
the action we're on to is, adopt, to be discussed, adopt the improvement alternate recommended for construction modified as deemed appropriate to satisfy the desires of the district. After that, it would be the direction of the engineer to prepare the final plans and specifications for the adopted plan and proceed towards a bid letting. And then it is the consideration of annexation and for reclassification. I have typically seen, or when I have had it done for the installments and interest rates, is at the filing of the plans and specifications, but I think that can be set.
I mean, we can
You
do
can set
that.
that at any time. You can set that now.
Yeah, we can do that today.
So,
Alright, any last thoughts of input from landowners before we close the public hearing? Then we will take board actions after that. Alright, hearing none, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
So,
I'll make a motion, you want a second?
yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Alright, then to our recommended steps next. First one, to approve the engineer's report and schedule. Well, we've already done that.
We did that.
The next is to adopt the improvement alternate recommendation for construction. So I guess based on conversations here, I think half inch is kinda out of the equation. We've talked about 3/4 and 1 inch primarily today. And we've talked about bidding concrete and plastic, so I would make a motion to adopt the improvement and direct the engineer to proceed with final plans and specifications for 3/4 and 1 inch coefficients with concrete and plastic alternates.
Is that your motion?
Yes,
I'll second your motion.
okay. Tyler, is there anything else you feel should be included in that for direction? Or, I mean, we can do other things as well, but
yeah,
anything
no,
that
I
ties
think
directly there?
that covers it. That will get you your four
4 options.
options for consideration.
Yep,
Your 2 different material types and your 2 different coefficients.
yep,
And then, I mean, yeah, I'll just leave it as plainly as that.
Yep.
It'll be those 4.
yep. So we would have 4 options to review when the bids come in. Is there any questions or discussions from the board?
I'm assuming that you want to start the project this fall, if possible.
Yeah.
Is that the direction
I mean, that'd be my desire is to get it in yet this winter, to get started this winter if possible. The plan is always, I set the completion dates on this, on any of these projects, so that there is only ever the 1 season's worth of potential damage. That doesn't guarantee that things will be, there's certainly going to be areas
So
of
proceed with.
compaction
Bid letting
and
for.
areas where through the tile where it goes, that there will be future damages considered. But it doesn't mean that standing crop has to be run down, but it does confine it to just the 1 growing season's worth of potential damage. And the sooner we can get on that, the better. And the better the prices, the better guys know their availability.
Yeah, the sooner we have that bid out, yeah, the better prices
Right.
we'll get
Yeah, so
because we'll have
the
more
intent
option.
is, look, the plans and specs and bid letting, look for that this fall. And, yeah, really hope that the contractor gets going during the late fall and winter. Any more works till freezing, till the machines won't work anymore typically, so.
All right, any questions on any of that? If not, I will have Tammy repeat the motion here, so we're all understanding the motion that's on the floor.
Motion by Stecker, second by Jerks, to adopt the improvement and direct the engineer to proceed with bid letting for 3-inch and 1-inch coefficient with concrete and plastic options.
3/4.
3/4 and 1 inch, yep.
Yeah, what did I
Yep.
say?
You
said
You said
3-inch.
Sorry, 3/4 inch, sorry.
We don't
I
have-
have 3/4 inch written down.
Yeah, we don't have an option for 3-inch tile, that'd be a whole nother
Yeah,
ballpark.
sorry, 3/4 inch.
All right, any final discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Plath,
Yes.
Jerks.
Yes.
Wactor,
Yes.
Nath,
Yes.
Stecker.
Yes. Motion carried unanimous. Then we should probably have a motion on years and interest rate for the cost of the project. We are currently at 5% interest with the way the interest rates are right now. I would love to go down, but I don't know that we can go down right now. And I think 20 years is appropriate for a project of this magnitude. So, okay, I would make a motion I'll make a motion for 20 years at 5% interest. Jack, do you wanna second that?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion on that from the board?
Where is the line between 10 and 20, just for when you offer waivers, length of time?
Preference of the board?
Okay, I was just curious.
I don't believe there's anything defined in the code or elsewhere, it's just
Oh, I
kinda,
realize that, but just kind of,
preference on the magnitude, I mean, basically, if you're looking at $1,700 an acre or whatever, how many years do you wanna spread that out over?
yeah.
So, they would have the option to pay it all up front and either finance it privately, or they could commercially finance it for 5 or 10 years or whatever through their own bank, or they could do waivers through the county. So they have, as a landowner, all of them would have the same options of personal versus the district,
Yep.
whether that's cash or personal financing, so. Yep, any other questions from the board or comments? Alright, roll call vote on that, please.
Plath,
Yes.
Jerks.
Yes.
Wactor,
Yes.
Nath,
Yes.
Stecker.
Yes, motion carried unanimous. Do we need to set stuff for annexation yet, Tyler, or at a later
That really
date?
could be done at any time. Because of the improvement project tripping the requirements for reclassification, that's something that will eventually need to be
Has to be done, yep.
considered. So it can be done now or at a later date too.
Do you just need direction to proceed
Just direction
with
to-
annexation and reclass?
Yeah, they're not typically done until the end, just because, one, we still don't know exactly what the project
Well, yeah,
is.
you can't do it
Right, I
today.
can't do it now anyway, because I don't know what the project is. So we'd be fine waiting on that too. It's just listed in here because the portions are in the report.
I mean, otherwise, we could have just simple motion for direction to do it in conjunction with the project. Today.
Whatever anybody's comfortable with.
Then we avoid another need for agenda item later on.
Yeah.
You got any, you guys, Jack, Roger, you got any? Okay, well, I make a motion to direct the engineer to proceed with annexation and reclassification. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimous. Alright, is there any other action for today, Tyler? Or any topics that we need to discuss, hash out?
I think that does it. That gets me.
Okay.
All right.
You're gonna go towards bid letting.
Yep.
He wasn't gonna win.
And how many bids are gotten? How does that bidding process work?
Yeah, we send to every contractor that has ever inquired or we've ever worked with, or we get as many eyes on this as we possibly can.
And you post on a bidding site.
And it goes online too, it goes up on an electronic bidding room. There's also notices that go out in papers.
Yep.
So that as many contractors as can see this do. There's a half dozen local ones that are pretty, you can nearly set your clock that they'll bid on it, and then another dozen or so that play from time to time at some bids. I would expect, what was it on 60 sub 4?
I was just gonna say, I think on
It was
60
close to
sub 4,
10.
we had roughly 10 contractors that bid.
10
So
contractors bid. Something like this will attract a lot of attention.
I would anticipate we should get
From-
sizable number of results, I would think, and I would think they'd be competitive too.
Yeah.
And then, once the bids are turned in, what happens?
Well, they get tabulated, we check everybody's math. There'll be essentially line items for what each one of those 4 options costs, what the bid amount on that is. And then the trustees have it set on a board agenda item for the consideration of the award. That will then set what of those options is actually gone with. And then the other ones are just good reference numbers.
And
Because it's only one of the coefficients and one of the tile types that goes.
Yep, and actually, for further information, earlier this year in March, we amended our drainage policy and added to it for increased notification that, to increase notification for improvement projects above the requirements in the Iowa code, we will send a postcard to all landowners informing them of the timing of the bid letting and any other important information, so that will be something that we have not done previously, but moving forward on all improvement projects, we're trying to increase communication, so we will anticipate seeing that coming in the mail, so then you could correlate that time with an agenda item, and if you wanted to come see, the results, you could inquire about that, you could show up at the meeting and watch and be part of that conversation.
I was gonna say, in Kossuth, we open them on a Tuesday, and then we take a week to check math and get everything compiled, and then they're considered that next Tuesday.
Yep, so typically there's a week in between to confirm everything and review it and then act on it the following.
Just to make sure everybody's calculator worked right, and, and the numbers at the bottom are good, so.
Yep. So yeah,
Yeah, that is then the process on that.
yep, then once a bid's accepted, we have contracts and kind of the formal documents, and then work can begin after that, so that's just the stage of the steps and process, so. Any other last minute questions, comments on anything with this tile district? If not, I guess again, thank you all for coming down and being part of the conversation. If you have any thoughts, feel free to reach out to me or Tyler or anyone on the board, and we will go from there, so. All right.
Thanks all.
Yep, thanks.
Now, that is the last thing on our agenda, unless we wanted to talk on the,
Thanks, Mark.
yep, thank you, Mike. The budget amendment, Timmy printed out some papers for us.
So the first page that looks like this is what the resolution will look like. And, first is listed as the library. The next one under courthouse, when you guys moved, insurance from general basic to general supplemental, it moved it all. And part of that was bonds and retired vision, which should be left in general. So if we put $3,000 in there, that will cover that, part of it. But we spent like $2,300 last year, so that should take care of any increase we have in that, I hope. Then non-departmental, that's a combination of if you include what Chris is asking for emergency management and the amount Phil is needing for mental health transport. So it brings the total to $299,517, and then $14,000 in miscellaneous revenue for what the hospital will be reimbursing him. And this is just a guess for his department because it's our first year doing this, so he really has no idea what that looks like. So these are just best guesses. The next page that I gave you is just a copy of the printout from Solutions, and that's how I balance to make sure the numbers are correct. And then the last page is our fund balance, and so it shows what general basic is projected to be, and then what it will be that I have written underneath if we go through with this amendment as is currently listed. So basically, if you approve tonight and all the other things that's listed on here, that's what the fund balances will look, projected fund balances will look like.
Alright,
So you got that 25% written down there, that's what it would be for the
That's,
that line above.
no, that's just if, you're supposed to have 25% to carry over. And so I was looking at rural basic for some other reason and wanted to know, when you were talking about,
internal loan.
yeah,
For-
internal loan, what 25% would need to be, and it would be 1.6. So that's why I did that, was just if
Okay.
you did an internal loan out of rural,
So-
what you would need there.
So even after the libraries, we would still be sitting fairly comfortably
Yes.
For this year.
for this
Yep.
year, yeah. Okay.
I just wanted you guys to see that so you would know
Yeah, no, that's good.
going in what,
I'm assuming though that you can never go below the number that you borrow against. You have to make sure that you have that much in.
oh, I'm sure. Well, for an internal loan, you wouldn't have to, but if you did a GO bond or something, then you would, but,
Are you talking that you can't go below having those dollars available?
No, you have to have sufficient. You do a loan, that doesn't mean that you transfer the dollar. You can do the internal loan, you don't necessarily transfer the dollars.
yeah, the 25% is just a guideline.
A
It's not a
guideline.
set in stone number.
Yep. That's just roughly on the timeline of
Yeah.
fiscal year to
You don't
property
wanna
tax.
see yourself below that, otherwise you're gonna struggle into the next.
Right.
Right.
Oh, gotta be able to pay the bills when they come
Yeah.
in, so, yeah. Kind of important.
I guess my point was, is if you TIF something, you can't necessarily say that 25% you can use for the TIF district, because you're gonna use some of that money.
No, you can't use the 25%.
Right.
That just needs to be there
Right.
Right.
for the mechanics
I'm
of
just looking at
carrying
what
through.
25% of it would be, so we
Okay.
know we could not go any lower than
That would show what's potentially available
Right.
above that.
Yes, correct. And I ask that you not give these out or any copies of these because I don't want them getting confused with the final product and the wrong thing getting in the paper or in somebody's hands and then we be contradicting. So
Yeah.
this is just for your information of what could happen.
Right. A draft.
Yes, correct.
Alright, so anyone have any discussion on this right now? It's as a board here, otherwise we can look at these numbers and keep them in mind until a decision is formally made. Okay, if there's no discussion right now, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, second on the floor, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried unanimous, we're adjourned at 11:48. Alright, thank you everyone.
And see y'all at 6 o'clock.
Yep. Jack, did you have anything you wanted to say
Nope.
or convey to us for